We all know that life can get loud. Some days it's being stuck in traffic for hours, other days it's crying alone at 3 a.m. while the world keeps spinning. But what if peace doesn't come from escaping the noise, but from learning to be still within it? Welcome to Be Still, the teacher reads among autumn leaves. In today's video, we'll talk about finding calm in chaos through gentle wisdom and quiet faith. So let's not waste any time and let's begin. He chooses the long way out of town, where the paths thin and the hills grow spare. The soft chatter of markets loosens behind him, replaced by the breath of open land, the hush of patient stone. He moves without hurry, as if listening for something older than footsteps. The sky is a clean, endless blue, and the earth wears the colors of late harvest, rust, umber, a quiet gold. Out here, the world forgets to perform. Out here, the heart runs out of places to hide. He does not come to prove anything. He comes to be empty, the way a vessel is empty on purpose, ready for the wine. He eats nothing. He lets the silence pass through him like wind through reeds. Hour by hour, the noise in his head, the noise from remembered voices, the noise of expectation, all burn off like mist. The ground is rough, the air honest. He sits on a flat stone and looks at the plain stretch of horizon until it stops being a line and becomes a question. The question is simple. What will hold you when everything else is gone? He closes his eyes. The sun climbs, a slow drumbeat. Shadows pivot and lengthen, bend and break, knit themselves back together. In the night, the stars arrive like 1,000 careful witnesses. He sleeps awkwardly, wakes thirsty, and keeps listening. When hunger comes, it's the kind that sharpens the senses. Every scent of sage, every whisper of sand, every scrape of dry grass against his cloak, each one announces itself. Even his heartbeat feels like a visitor he greets by name. That's when the old voice sidles close, not loud, just familiar. It speaks in the native tongue of scarcity. You could end this ache in a breath. Just say the word. He looks at the stones. They are smooth, pale, obedient to gravity. His stomach tightens as if to agree. But hunger is not the horizon, only weather passing over it. He lays a hand on his ribs and exhales. Bread fills bodies, trust fills lives. He keeps listening. The voice circles, changing its costume but not its aim. It points toward a high ridge where the world looks smaller and the future looks purchasable. Stand up there, look down. See how quickly crowns fall into the hands of those who want them most? The people ache for a ruler. Let desire do your work. He imagines the weight of borrowed power pressing like a ring that won't come off. The air thins on the ridge. Promises multiply like mirages. He feels, for a moment, the seduction of shortcuts, the clean, intoxicating efficiency of forcing good to happen. Then, he hears the quiet again. Good. Forced by fear is not good. It is theater with sharper props. He steps back from the edge. The wind untangles his hair. The voice tries one more mask. Spectacle glued to trust. Jump and be caught. Let heaven rescue you publicly. Turn faith into proof. Make wonder the leash they hold you by. He can almost feel the rush of air, the crowd's intake of breath, the applause born from panic. He shakes the thought away like dust from a sleeve. Wonder is true, but showmanship hollows it. Love that must be constantly reassured is not love, just hostage-taking by anxiety. He looks up into the clean reach of sky and refuses to bargain with it. There is a stillness after resistance, the kind that feels less like victory and more like clarity. The voice fades the way heat does at dusk, not defeated as much as irrelevant. He is alone again, and not alone. In the quiet, something inside steadies. He is not here to hoard safety, nor to trade the holy for applause. He is here for the work of mending, one heart at a time, with hands that bless before they command. He is here to hold out a life that is light enough to lift others. Days gather, nights loosen. He becomes a slow river inside his own chest, sure of its course though it cannot yet see the sea. He speaks little, but when he does, the words feel tested by weather. He thinks of the people beyond these hills, the tired and the proud, the watchers and the forgotten, the ones who hide anger behind commerce and the ones who hide grief behind jokes. He thinks of those who trust everything that sparkles and those who cannot trust the dawn. They will not come to a wilderness like this, so the wilderness will go to them, distilled in a voice, a sentence, a story they can carry home. He rises and walks. The path back seems shorter, though nothing in the landscape has changed. Stones are still stones, but he no longer asks them to be bread. Heights are still heights, but he no longer begs them to be shortcuts. Temples are still temples, but he no longer needs their ledges to measure love. He drinks from a spring cupped in rock. The water is cold and ungilded. It enters his body like truth, unadorned, sufficient, alive. As he nears the outskirts of town, the hum of ordinary life returns. A gate hinge complaining, a mother calling a child in from play, the scrape of a broom against a threshold. The autumn air carries the smell of pressed olives and wood smoke. He passes a tree with leaves turned the color of embers about to go out. A boy stops to stare, then smiles for no reason. He smiles back, careful with the moment, as if it were fragile glass. He will speak soon. Not because the wilderness is finished with him, but because it is finished forming the words he must say. There is a scroll waiting. Letters black as seeds, paper pale as a field ready to receive them. He feels the cadence rise in him, not the drumbeat of spectacle, but the steady pulse of something true. He has nothing to prove and everything to give. He steps into the gathering light, and the first door opens. Inside, faces turn toward him the way sunflowers turn toward the sun. He takes the scroll into his hands. The room quiets, the way a lake does right before it reveals the sky. He begins to read. He steps back into the town quietly, as if the silence of the wilderness still walks beside him. The dust of the road clings to his sandals, but his eyes carry a calm the world did not give him. Word spreads quickly. He's home. He's back. And something about him feels different. Some say he looks older, not in his face, but in his spirit, like someone who has listened to the wind speak ancient things. The synagogue doors open. He enters. It is Sabbath. People find their places on worn stone benches. The air smells faintly of oil lamps and pressed linen. The scroll is handed to him, not by chance, not by ceremony, but like a moment finally arriving on time. He does not rush. He unrolls it slowly, as if touching something sacred and familiar, something that has been waiting for his fingertips since before he was born. The room settles into breathless quiet. "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me," he reads, voice steady, neither loud nor timid. "He has anointed me to bring good news to the poor, to proclaim freedom for the captives and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free." His words fall like autumn leaves, gentle yet undeniable. Some drift softly into open hearts. Others land on skepticism and slide away. Still, no one speaks. Even the children fidget less. It feels as though time itself has paused to listen. He finishes the passage, rolls the scroll back up with care, and hands it to the attendant. But instead of leaving, he sits. Eyes turn toward him, every gaze drawn by something they cannot name. He lets the stillness stretch only a moment more, then says quietly, "Today, this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing." A ripple moves through the room. Some inhale sharply, some blink in disbelief. Others feel something warm press against their chest. Could it be true? Could the promise be now? Could the one reading the words also be the one they speak of? Whispers begin in the corners. "Isn't this Joseph's son? He grew up here. How can he speak like this?" Yet their doubts do not weaken the force of his presence. It is not pride they sense. It is authority, like a river that knows its own direction. He speaks again. Not harshly, but honestly, like someone refusing to wrap truth in soft cloth. He reminds them of prophets who were ignored in their hometowns, of widows and outsiders who believed more than those closest to the temple. His words are clean, like a blade meant for pruning, not destroying. Some are moved, some are offended. A few stand as if to interrupt, but his gaze stills them. He is not there to win applause. He is there to wake hearts. Outside, the wind stirs fallen leaves against the stone walls. Inside, something else stirs. Conviction, discomfort, hope. The scroll rests silently now, but its words breathe in the space between people. He rises and walks out, not with haste, not with triumph, but with steady purpose. Those who follow him into the sunlight notice the way he looks at the world, as if seeing both the brokenness and the healing already on its way. The streets are familiar, market stalls with figs and pottery, children chasing each other through narrow alleys, an old woman hanging dyed cloth to dry. Yet everything feels slightly altered, as though the reading inside the synagogue pressed a fingerprint onto the day. People ask him questions. Some are curious, some demanding. He answers few. His silence is not dismissal, but invitation, an open door waiting to be stepped through. The words he read are no longer bound to parchment. They now hover in the air, looking for a place to take root. By evening, the sun rests low, casting long shadows across rooftops and fields. He walks where the road meets the edge of town, where olive trees line the path like quiet guardians. A group follows, not many, but enough. They want to hear more. Not rumors, not echoes, but his voice, the one that made Scripture sound like it was breathing again. They walk beside him as twilight deepens. Someone asks, "What does it mean? Freedom for captives? Sight for the blind?" He does not answer immediately. Instead, he pauses beside a tree shedding its last leaves and looks at each face before him as if weighing what their hearts are ready to hold. Then he begins, not with a command, not with a sermon, but with a story. Word spreads faster than footsteps. By morning, people are already gathering. Farmers with hands rough from harvest, mothers holding quiet children, elders leaning on carved staffs. They gather not in a temple or a marketplace, but beneath a wide canopy of autumn branches, their colors glowing like embers in the soft light. The ground is cool, the air gentle. They do not fully know why they came, only that something in them was stirred when the teacher read the ancient words as though they were alive. He stands among them, not elevated on a platform, not wrapped in ceremonial robes, just a man in simple garments, dust still clinging to the hem. Yet the space around him feels set apart, as though the wind itself pauses to listen. He looks at the faces before him, curious, tired, skeptical, hopeful, and he begins to speak. His voice carries no force, but it carries weight. Not the kind that burdens, but the kind that anchors. He does not recite polished doctrine. He tells stories of fields and seeds, of lamps and hidden treasure, of shepherds who leave 99 sheep just to find the one that is lost. The people lean closer, not because they understand everything, but because in his words they sense something familiar, like hearing their own heartbeat in someone else's chest. Some fold their arms, measuring every sentence. Others blink slowly, letting the quiet sink into the spaces of their worry. A boy sits cross-legged near the front, chin resting on his knees, listening with the kind of focus only children and the truly desperate can muster. Farther back, a man with weary eyes watches carefully, as though deciding whether to hope again might cost more than he can pay. One story ends, and another begins, not with elaborate gestures, but with soft clarity. A farmer went out to sow seed, he says. Some fell on the path and the birds came quickly. The listeners see it in their minds, the burst of wings, the hard earth, the seed gone before it even settled. Some fell on rocky soil. It sprang up fast, but with no roots, it withered in the sun. They picture the brittle stalks, the heat, the failure. Some fell among thorns, and the thorns grew and choked it. Heads lower slightly. They know what it is to be choked by worry. But some fell on good soil, and it grew, 30, 60, 100 times what was planted. Silence follows. Not empty silence, but heavy with thought. He does not explain. He lets the listeners sit with it, like seeds resting in soil they aren't yet aware of. Murmurs ripple through the crowd. Some nod slowly. Others frown, their brows tightening as if trying to solve a riddle. A woman closes her eyes, holding the story close as though it were being told only to her. Finally, someone speaks. A man near the front, his voice cautious but genuine. What kind of soil are we supposed to be? The teacher looks at him, not surprised, not amused, but with a kindness that invites more questions, not fewer. That depends, he says, on what your heart lets in and what it refuses to keep. Some don't understand, some don't want to understand, but some, just a few, feel something shift. Not loudly, quietly, like light finding its way through old cracks. From where he stands, he can see children collecting fallen leaves, unaware they've drifted into holy ground. He can see a widow wiping her eyes, though she cannot say why. He can see men who have spent years building walls around their hearts, now wondering if those walls are not protection, but prisons. The teacher continues, not with arguments, but with truth spoken in simple, earthy language. He speaks of lamps not meant to be hidden under beds, of treasures found in fields by those willing to sell everything to hold them, of nets cast into the sea, catching both the good and the bad, and the patience of waiting until the right time to separate them. Somewhere between his words, the leaves rustle lightly, as though nature is agreeing. Day leans toward afternoon. The sun filters through branches, sprinkling light across faces both hardened and hopeful. No one notices how long they've been sitting. Hunger is forgotten. Time is gentle. One of his closest followers draws near during a pause. He speaks quietly, but those nearby still hear. Why do? You speak in parables? Why not just say it plainly? The teacher looks at the leaves drifting around them, then back at his friend. Because truth is like a seed. It must be received, not forced. Ears may hear, but only hearts can listen. Somewhere among the listeners, a question begins to rise, not about soil or seeds, but about themselves. What does it mean to truly listen, not just with ears, but with a life? The teacher steps forward slightly, ready to speak again, not to answer all questions, but to draw them deeper. The air grows still, as though waiting. What he says next will not be about seeds or soil, but about how faith grows, and how easily it can be lost if not cared for. And so he begins. He lets the crowd settle into the quiet again, then raises his hand toward the slope where last season's stalks still stand, pale spires against the soft burn of autumn. Look, he says, not pointing to heaven this time, but to the ground beneath their feet. The field knows how to listen. They follow his gaze. The land has been harvested. Stubble glints like short bristles. Loose chaff shivers in the breeze. A farmer in the distance walks a worn path, a bag of seed slung over one shoulder, his hand opening and closing with steady rhythm. The gesture is simple and ancient, older than empires and younger than the hope that drives it. A farmer went out, the teacher says again, to sow. His words are not decorative. They are a window. Through it, the listeners see the first scatter of grain arc and fall. Some kernels strike the hard footpath where feet have packed the soil into something like stone. Birds know that sound. They swoop, quick, precise, and the seed vanishes almost before it lands. The teacher's face is gentle, but the picture is not. There are hearts, he says quietly. The way that path is a heart. His hand moves, and with it the scene. Now the seed finds a patch where soil is thin over rock. A green flare rises overnight, promising, bright, all speed and no depth. The sun climbs, the air turns sharp, the small stems crisp and curl back into the dust that fooled them. There are hearts, he says, that burn fast and then burn out. He waits long enough for the image to sting. Then he gives them the thorns. They start small, barely a whisper among healthy shoots. But thorns do not stay small. They climb, they coil, they steal water, hoard light, and turn a field into a tangle where good things cannot breathe. There are hearts, he says, that welcome the seed and also welcome everything that will choke it. Finally, he opens his hand toward the far strip of dark, rich ground. You can tell where it is because the stubble there stands thicker and the soil beneath looks almost black, like bread crust. Seed slips in, disappears, and does the quiet work of becoming more than it was. Shoots come slow, then steady. Heads fill, weight gathers. By harvest, the field answers. The farmer with laughter, 30, 60, 100 times the handful he threw to the wind. There are hearts, he says, his voice low, that keep what they receive. Around him, the leaves whisper as if approving the lesson. The people sit with the four scenes spread out inside them like maps. He doesn't press. He does not name names. He lets the field do the teaching. A child near the front leans forward, as if the story might grow faster if he brings his face closer to it. An older man rubs dust between his fingers, remembering seasons when the ground answered him and seasons when it refused. A woman turns a fallen leaf over and over, tracing its veins, thinking about roots, how some go deep enough to drink from places drought cannot touch. The teacher speaks again, voice easy as water moving over small stones. Seed is not stingy, he says. Seed is generous. It does not accuse the ground. It believes there is a place to become what it was made to be. He kneels, takes a pinch of soil, and lets it fall back in a thin stream. But the ground plays its part, he adds. Paths can be broken up, stones can be moved, thorns can be pulled. He does not say it like a threat. He says it like a possibility. Quiet, reachable, patient as the rhythm of a hoe in careful hands. A murmur lifts from the crowd, the kind that isn't quite sound, more like the inward shift when a room agrees to face the same way. Someone behind the olive tree thinks of a habit he has defended as harmless. Someone else thinks of the hardness she has praised as strength. A merchant imagines a ledger with fewer lines. A mother imagines time that is not crammed full of worry. The field inside them stirs. Some of you, he says, carry a path across your chest, a well-traveled refusal where truth cannot sink. Let tenderness walk there. Let forgiveness reign there. Let the ground become soft again. He looks at others. And some of you have rocks. Disappointments left like buried anchors. Old vows you made to never hope again. Do not be ashamed of moving them. Strong backs were given for holy labor. His gaze turns to where the thorns grow thickest. And some of you live among the tangles, the worries of tomorrow, the shine of wealth that promises more and delivers less, the frantic we call responsible. Thorns do not cooperate. They must be taken out by the roots. He stands, dusts his hands, and smiles the kind of smile that comes from seeing a difficult task as a beautiful one. The farmer is not discouraged by a season of small harvest, he says. He learns the ground. He returns with new patience. He trusts that what he scatters today will be answered by a future he cannot yet see. A breeze gathers, sliding through the branches, brushing faces. The bag at the farmer's hip in the distance swings like a pendulum, another handful, and another. The teacher watches him a moment, then looks back at the people. If you knew how, much seed still waits, he says, you would not despair of the soil. He does not resolve the parable with a neat bow. He gives it back to them the way a sower gives seed to ground, expecting life, not demanding it. The sky has shifted toward late afternoon. Shadows lengthen like pages turn to the next line. He lowers his hand, and the hush that follows is not emptiness but room for someone to pick up a spade, even if only in the heart. When they rise, they do so more slowly, as if careful not to disturb what has just been planted. Some brush dirt from their knees without quite knowing why. Others press a palm briefly to the space beneath the ribs, as if checking where the seed went. The teacher takes a few steps and stops beside a patch where thistles choke the stubble. He touches one thorn lightly, then looks at the faces around him, curious, guarded, ready, afraid. There is work to do inside, he says, kind as rain. Shall we see what kind of ground we are? The crowd slowly thins, but many remain seated on the blanket of fallen leaves, digesting more than words. Some stare at the ground, seeing in the soil a mirror they didn't ask for. Others close their eyes as if to feel what cannot be seen. The teacher is quiet for a while, letting the hush do what words sometimes cannot. Sink in, soften, unsettle. He walks a few paces away and kneels beside a patch of bare earth. His fingers sift through it tenderly, as though handling something fragile. The seed is not the problem, he says softly. It holds life. But the ground decides if that life will grow or wither. People listen, closely, painfully. It is easier to blame the seed, blame the sower, blame the sky for not raining. It is harder to admit that the soil is us. He looks at them gently. Some of you have built walls around your hearts, convincing yourselves it keeps you safe. But nothing grows on stone. Nothing drinks from earth hardened by old pain. He doesn't accuse, he invites. Let the rain come. Let tenderness break the ground. It is not weakness for soil to soften. A woman pulls her shawl closer around her shoulders, her throat tight. She remembers when she first stopped hoping because it hurt too much. She wonders if God still remembers how her voice sounded when she used to pray. And some of you, he continues, scooping a small stone from the earth, have shallow soil. You welcome what is good, quickly, eagerly, but you do not let it sink. You run from silence. You run from depth. Roots take time. Roots are patient. A young man looks away. He knows the thrill of beginnings, grand ideas, bold promises, but he has never learned to stay through the slow hidden part where nothing blooms yet. Then the teacher gestures to a tangle of thorny stems nearby. They cling to the ground, sharp and stubborn. Some hearts, he says, are full of thorns, worries, greed, the need to be seen. You think you can grow both, truth and fear, faith and control, but thorns always win unless they are pulled out at the roots. A merchant at the back lowers his head. His hands, once gentle, have grown tight from holding too much. He knows the thorns by name: profit, status, exhaustion. Finally, the teacher presses his fingers into softer soil, darker and moist. And some hearts, he says quietly, are ready. They do not pretend to be perfect, but they are open, willing. And life grows there. He stands, dusts his hands. A silence follows, not empty but full. The kind of silence that feels like rain has just touched long, dry earth. No one speaks. Leaves rustle softly overhead, floating down in amber spirals. Some listeners shift uneasily, as if something inside them has been touched too honestly. Others breathe deeper, as though for the first time in years, something within them has space. The teacher does not press. He doesn't force tears or confessions. He simply lets the moment breathe. Then, without warning, the wind changes. It comes softly at first, threading through the trees. The sky, once a calm copper blue, grows pale. A hush sweeps across the field, animals quiet, branches still. The teacher looks up, studying the air the way a sailor studies a shifting tide. Clouds begin to gather, heavy and gray, curling like smoke. Children are pulled closer to their mothers. A shepherd hurriedly leads his flock toward shelter, calling to them as leaves scatter like frightened birds. The teacher places a steady hand on the trunk of an old tree and watches the sky. His face is calm, not surprised, not afraid. He turns to the people and for a long moment says nothing. A distant rumble rolls across the hills. Someone whispers, "A storm?" Another replies, "It came so quickly." The first drop of rain lands on a child's open palm, cold, startling, then more. The wind grows wilder now, tossing loose branches, pulling at cloaks and hair. The scent of rain deepens, metallic and earthy. The once still autumn world begins to tremble under the weight of sky and water. Some begin to gather their belongings, unsure whether to flee or stay. Eyes turn to the teacher. He stands firm, like a rooted tree, even as the leaves tear from their branches and the clouds groan above. The storm will test more than the strength of trees and rooftops. It will test the soil within them. And so, as the first rush of rain sweeps across the field, the teacher steps forward, not to escape it, but to meet it. The rain does not walk in, it runs. Sheets of water tumble from the sky, striking the earth with the urgency of something long held back. The wind howls through the trees, bending branches until they creak like old doors. People scatter, clutching cloaks over their heads, calling out to one another through the roar of the storm. Yet the teacher walks forward, steady as a lantern in the dark. They rush toward the boats by the lake. Waves slam against the shoreline, white foam, tearing at the edges like teeth. Someone calls out, "We must get across before it worsens." Another hesitates. Should we wait? But fear has a way of moving feet faster than thought. They push the boat into the water. The wood is slick beneath their hands, the cold seeping through linen and skin. The teacher steps in last, calm as ever, as though the storm were nothing more than a restless child. They begin to row, arms straining, muscles burning under the weight of wind and wave. The lake, once glass, is now a living thing, heaving, groaning, rising in dark swells that tower over the sides of the boat. Rain stings their faces. Thunder cracks open the sky. The world feels as though it is being unmade. The teacher lies at the stern, his head resting on a folded cloak, eyes closed, sleeping, while water pours into the boat, while hands blister on the oars, while fear pulses hot in their throats. Someone shouts over the storm, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" No answer. Another wave crashes over the side. The boat lurches. Panic sharpens. They stumble toward him, shaking his shoulder, voices tangled with anger and despair. "Wake up! We're going to die!" He opens his eyes. Not startled, not confused, just awake, as if he had never truly been asleep. He rises slowly to his feet. The boat rocks violently, but he stands as though the storm refuses to touch him. He looks, not at the water first, not at the clouds, but at them. His gaze is steady, and in it is a question deeper than any thunder. Then he turns to the wind and the water. His voice is not loud. Peace, be still. The words are simple. They do not fight the storm. They simply speak to it, as one speaks to something that knows them and must obey. The wind exhales one last fierce breath, then falls quiet. The waves flatten, trembling like a heartbeat calming down. Rain softens to a whisper, then stops. Silence. Not the empty kind, but the kind filled with wonder, thick, holy, impossible. The lake lies smooth again, reflecting the bruised sky. The only sound is their breathing, ragged and disbelieving. They stare at him. Who is this? Even the wind and the waves listen to him. The teacher sits back down, as though nothing unusual has happened at all. Water drips from their hair, from their trembling hands. Their hearts still race, but the storm now lives in them, not around them. The boat drifts quietly toward the far shore, the world washed clean. No one speaks for a long time. Some stare at the water, some at the sky, some at him. Finally, he looks at them, not with anger, but with the softness of someone who knows how fear works. "Why are you so afraid?" he asks. "Do you still have no faith?" His words do not wound, they reveal. The boat reaches shallow waters. The smell of wet earth and cedar trees fills the air. One by one they step onto land, legs unsteady, not from the waves, but from the realization that they are walking beside someone who commands both storm and silence. The sky opens just enough to let a pale strip of sunlight stretch across the horizon. They walk inland, still dripping, still quiet. The road ahead glistens with rain, puddles reflecting the fading clouds. The wind that once roared now brushes softly over the fields, cool and clean. Behind them, the lake lies as calm as a sheet of glass. Ahead of them, people wait, sick, hurting, searching. The teacher keeps walking, not toward rest, but toward them, toward the ones who need his touch, his voice, his presence more than they need calm weather. His footsteps are gentle against the damp earth, but a new strength lives in the eyes of those who follow. They have seen a storm bow to a whisper, and soon they will see hearts do the same. The storm has vanished, but the memory of it lingers like water clinging to their skin. The lake now lies quiet behind them, smooth as a mirror, and yet inside their chests the wind has not entirely settled. They walk the muddy path in silence, their sandals leaving soft impressions in the soaked earth. No one quite knows what to say, not after watching the sky bend to a whisper. The teacher walks ahead, not hurried, not weary, simply present. Every so often he glances back, not to check if they follow, but as though making sure they can breathe again. Some keep their eyes on the ground, others keep glancing upward, just to be certain the clouds stay still. It is not that they no longer fear storms, it is that storms no longer feel like the final word. Past the fields, the land widens. Villagers gather near a well, drawing water and trading stories. When they see him approach, voices fall. Some step closer with hope in their eyes. Others hang back, unsure. But all of them know, word has spread. He speaks, and things change. He touches, and the broken stand. He commands, and even the weather obeys. They bring to him a man bent by sickness, his breathing shallow, his wrists trembling as though his bones remember every winter they've survived. The teacher kneels, placing a hand lightly on the man's shoulder. There are no rituals, no incantations, just a quiet presence, like the moment before dawn when darkness begins to loosen its grip. "Stand," he says. The man shivers, then rises like a branch freed from frost. Tears form in his eyes before he even understands he is healed. The crowd exhales, some in wonder, some in envy, some in relief. A child laughs, high and bright, as though she has just seen the sun for the first time. The disciples watch, and though they have seen healing before, today it feels different. Maybe it's because they still taste lake water on their lips. Maybe it's because they now understand that the power in his voice is the same power that held back the wind. They continue along the road, deeper into the village. Birds return to branches. The smell of wet soil rises, warm and rich. Women hang damp clothes on lines. A farmer bends to check sprouting. Roots, still damp from the rain. Ordinary life begins moving again, unaware that moments ago, nature itself was asked to be quiet. One of the disciples, young, still trembling from the night before, walks beside the teacher. He doesn't ask the question out loud, but it burns behind his eyes. How can a voice calm both storms and souls? The teacher says nothing at first. He simply watches a sparrow hop along the fence, shaking water from its small wings. Then he speaks, not as a reply, but like a door opening to a deeper room. Peace isn't found when storms end, he says. Peace is found when you remember who is in the boat with you. They walk a little further. Ahead, a hill rises where the trees thin and the wind hums softer. People begin following. Some curious, some desperate, some simply drawn. They bring their worries with them, debts unpaid, fevers that won't break, loneliness that follows like a shadow. They gather at the base of the hill, eyes lifted. The teacher sits upon a smooth rock near the top. The world below spreads like an open page. Fields, rooftops, winding roads, all washed clean by the storm. The disciples take their places beside him. The crowd settles, on grass, stones, the edges of hope. He looks over them, the weary, the proud, the broken, the gentle, the ones who think they have everything, and the ones who have nothing but breath. His voice, when it comes, is steady, not thunder, not wind, something softer. Blessed, he begins, are the poor in spirit. Every word seems to land like seed on fresh soil. Those who were crushed by life sit a little straighter. Those who thought they were strong feel something quietly unravel. Grief, hunger, gentleness, mercy, he calls them not weakness but blessing. For theirs is the kingdom of heaven. The teachings don't sound like laws. They sound like invitations into a life not ruled by fear, not by pride, but by trust. A life where the storm might come, but it will not own them. Somewhere in the crowd, someone begins to cry, not loudly, but as though something heavy has finally been set down. And just beyond the hill, leaves rustle in a soft breeze, as though all of creation leans closer. What he says next will shape not just minds, but the very way hearts beat. He lifts his eyes to the horizon, where the sun begins to break through clouds, and continues to teach. He walks toward the hill, the one brushed with amber leaves and cooled by the fading breath of morning. The air is still damp from yesterday's storm, carrying the scent of wet bark and crushed grass. People follow behind him, not in perfect lines, but like streams joining a river. Mothers with tired eyes, parent boys with slings at their sides, old men leaning on walking sticks, fishermen roughened by wind and sea. They don't know exactly what he will say, but something in them aches to hear it. He reaches a place where the land lifts gently above the fields, a natural seat made of stone and time. He settles there, not high above them like a ruler, but just above enough for his voice to carry. The sun breaks softly through cloud, weaving light across the hilltop in long golden thread. He looks at them, really looks, and when he speaks, it isn't like the scribes or scholars. There is no pride in his voice, no weight of performance. It flows like water down a dry stream bed. Blessed are the poor in spirit, he says, and the words don't sound like pity. They sound like promise. Those who feel empty, overlooked, lost, he calls them the heirs of heaven. Some in the crowd shift, unsure if they heard correctly. The poor, not the strong, not the wealthy, are blessed. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Faces lower. Grief is not often named in public, but here it is not shamed or silenced. Here, sorrow is not a sign of weakness, but of love. Blessed are the meek. They expect him to praise the powerful, the ones who make others obey. Instead, he speaks of those who do not crush, who do not shout, the gentle, the soft-spoken. He says they will inherit the earth. Birdsong fills a pause, as if creation itself agrees. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Not those who hunger for wealth or power, those who hunger for what's right, even when it costs them. The wind moves through the trees, scattering a few more leaves. Blessed are the merciful, the pure in heart, the peacemakers. Mercy, not vengeance. Purity, not performance. Peace, not war. And then, Blessed are those who are persecuted for doing what is right. Some heads lift at that. You mean the wounded, the mocked, the ones who lose friends because they won't betray what is good? Yes, even them, especially them. He does not offer comfort wrapped in denial. He offers truth wrapped in eternity. The hill is quiet. Then he speaks of light. You are the light of the world, he says, looking at ordinary people, hardworking, worried, imperfect. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Some blink in disbelief. Them? Light? You don't light a lamp and hide it under a basket, he continues. You put it on a stand so it gives light to everyone in the house. The disciples glance at one another. He is not talking about lanterns. In the same way, he says, let your light shine before others so they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. Not shine for applause, not shine to be seen. Shine so that when people look at you, they see him. His tone shifts, not harder, but firmer. Do not think I have come to erase the law or the prophets, he says. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. Some Pharisees at the back stiffen, others lean closer. Until heaven and earth pass away, not even the smallest stroke of a letter will disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. But then, unless your righteousness is deeper than that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. It is no longer about rules on scrolls. It is about the heart holding them. The crowd sits still, hearts thudding. The storm yesterday was loud. This one is quiet, made not of wind and water, but truth and love, each word breaking and rebuilding something inside them. A child sneezes, a sheep bleats in the distance, someone wipes their eyes. He looks out over them, the blessed, the bewildered, the broken, and his voice softens again. They have heard who is blessed. Now they will hear what this new kind of life looks like. And so he begins to speak, not of crowns or armies, but of anger, forgiveness, faithfulness, and the quiet work of the heart. The hill is quiet. Every ear bent toward his voice as though the very air is listening. Autumn leaves flutter down, slow and soft, settling at their feet like whispered amens. He has spoken of blessing, of the poor, the grieving, the gentle, and his words still linger like the warmth of sunlight on their skin. But now his gaze sharpens, not harsh, only clear. You are the salt of the earth, he says. Some frown slightly, unsure whether this is a warning or an honor. Salt, ordinary, common, clutched in clay jars in every kitchen. Yet salt preserves, salt cleanses, salt gives flavor to the bland and keeps corruption from spreading. Without it, everything rots. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? His voice is steady, not condemning, but grieving the thought. It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. They know what he means. It is possible to be near truth and still empty of it, to carry the words of heaven, but live like the earth owns you. He lets the silence rest for a moment before continuing. You are the light of the world. A stir moves through the crowd. Light. They understand this too. In their small homes, a single oil lamp can hold back the night. Light shows the path. Light reveals what is hidden. Light does not boast. It simply shines because it cannot do anything else. A city on a hill cannot be hidden, he continues, lifting his eyes to the distant ridge where stone houses catch the sun. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a basket. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. A small boy looks at the basket beside his mother and quietly lifts it off their family's lamp, as though now knowing what to do with it. In the same way, the teacher says, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Not shine for pride, not to gather applause, but to point upward, toward the one who gave the light in the first place. He pauses, the wind brushing gently past him, carrying the scent of olive trees. Somewhere in the crowd, a woman presses her hand to her chest as if something there has just awakened. A fisherman looks at his weathered palms and wonders how ordinary hands could ever carry light. A tax collector standing farther back lowers his eyes, wondering if salt can be restored. The teacher looks over them all, and his voice deepens, not louder, but weighted with purpose. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets, he says. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. Murmurs ripple. Some are relieved, others are unsettled. The law, given through Moses, held sacred for generations, he honors it, yet he is about to stretch their understanding of it beyond anything they expected. Until heaven and earth pass away, he says, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen will disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Eyes study him more sharply now. Is he building upon the law or rewriting it? He speaks again, each word firm as stone. Unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. This stings. Surpass the most disciplined, the most devout? How? But he does not leave them to despair. He speaks of hearts, because righteousness that only lives in the hands and lips is shallow. Righteousness must live in the heart first, or it will crumble under weight. He looks down at the soil beneath him, rich and damp from the rain days before. Seeds do not grow on stone, and neither does truth. He lifts his gaze again, and his next words do not concern politics, armies, or revolutions. They go somewhere harder: anger, forgiveness, desire, truth, the kind of battles no sword can win. The crowd grows still again, because they know the hardest wars are fought within. A child shifts closer to his mother. A man clenches his jaw. Another stares into his hands as though they are no longer his own. The teacher breathes in the quiet and begins to speak of things deeper than silence, deeper than storms, deeper than laws carved in stone. He speaks of the human heart, and his voice, calm as a steady river, carries them forward. His voice remains calm, but his words begin to press deeper, no longer just into behavior, but into the hidden corners of the soul. He speaks of anger, not simply as fire in one's hands, but as embers smoldering in the heart. He speaks of reconciliation, not when it is convenient, but while bitterness still bleeds. He speaks of truth, not as a cloak one wears in public, but as something that must live even in unspoken thoughts. Then he says what many hoped he wouldn't. You have heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. A hush spreads across the hillside like a shadow. Love your enemies. Not tolerate, not ignore. Love. Some look away. Others stare at him, trying to decide if he is something serious, or if this is some kind of test. He continues, eyes steady, voice unshaken. If you love only those who love you, what reward is there in that? Even the tax collectors do that. And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? A fisherman at the edge of the crowd shifts on the grass. He thinks of Roman soldiers marching through his village, swords gleaming, boots crushing olive branches. He thinks of debts collected without mercy. He thinks of betrayal. Love them? A woman near the front closes her eyes. She thinks of the neighbor who spread lies about her. She thinks of silence that replaced friendship. Love her? The teacher does not lessen the weight of it. He does not say kindness is easy, but he speaks it as though it is the truest freedom a person can carry. Be sons and daughters of your Father in heaven, he says, for he makes his sun rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. The wind stirs gently, ruffling cloaks and hair. Somewhere in the distance, a field glistens under sunlight, the same light falling on both farmer and thief. He speaks next of giving, not with trumpets, not for applause, but quietly, like rain watering unseen roots. When you give to the needy, he says, do not announce it. Do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. He speaks of prayer, not on street corners, not to be admired, but in secret, like a child whispering into a loving ear. Your Father knows what you need before you ask him. And then, like a stream flowing through cracked ground, he gives them words to pray, simple, humble, full of surrender. He speaks of fasting, not with pale faces and dramatic sighs, but with oil on the hair and joy in the eyes, because devotion is not theater. Then he speaks of treasure. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, he says, where moth and rust destroy, and thieves break in and steal. They think of barns, coin pouches, family heirlooms. Store up treasure in heaven, he says, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. He speaks of eyes as lamps of the body. If they are clear, the whole body is full of light. If clouded by greed or envy, everything dims inside. And then, like placing a stone gently but firmly into the foundation of his teaching, he says, you cannot serve both God and wealth. Some in the crowd feel that stone land within them. They shift, uneasy. He does not stop there. He speaks of worry, about food, clothing, tomorrow's burden. He gestures to the sky. Look at the birds, he says. Small sparrows circle above, free from fear. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, yet your Father feeds them. He gestures to flowers blooming wild among the grass. See the lilies of the field. They do not labor or spin, yet not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. And then, gently, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. The crowd breathes in the quiet. The branches above sway softly as though agreeing. By now, some are undone, not by thunder, but by kindness they do not know how to carry. Some want to run. Some want to kneel. Some want to weep without knowing why. The teacher looks over them, the angry, the afraid, the proud, the longing, and speaks one more seed into the soil of their hearts. Do to others what you would have them do to you, he says. This is the law and the prophets. A truth so simple it fits in a child's hands, a truth so heavy it could break a kingdom. As the wind quiets and the last of his words settle like leaves on water, he prepares to speak again, this time not of law or sacrifice, but of mercy told in the form of stories. His words hang in the air like lanterns, lighting places in the heart people usually keep hidden. The crowd is quiet, listening not only with their ears, but with burdens, memories, and hopes they rarely name aloud. The teacher pauses, then begins another story. Not with thunder, but with a slow, steady tone, like a farmer speaking while walking his field at dawn. The kingdom of heaven, he says, is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. They picture it instantly, a farmer, calloused hands, small bag of grain, scattering hope into open soil, rows of earth turned and ready, the soft rhythm of faith. But while everyone was sleeping, he continues, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. A murmur moves through the crowd. They know this kind of story. Wheat and weeds are not strangers to them. They've seen how weeds grow silently in the night, wrapping themselves around young stalks like lies around a truth. When the wheat sprouted and formed heads, the teacher says, then the weeds also appeared. The people nod. Of course, it always happens that way. The moment something good begins to grow, something uninvited rises beside it, faster, messier, harder to kill. The servants in the story ask the farmer, "Sir, didn't you sow good seed in your field? Where then did the weeds come from?" "An enemy did this," the farmer replies. Then comes the question they all expect. "Do you want us to go and pull them up?" This is the part where most would say yes. Pull out everything that does not belong. Burn it. Clean the field. But the teacher shakes his head gently. "No," he says, voice steady, "because while you are pulling the weeds, you may uproot the wheat with them." The crowd quiets deeper, leaning into the unexpected truth. "Let both grow together until the harvest," he says. "At that time I will tell the harvesters, first collect the weeds and tie them in bundles to be burned, then gather the wheat and bring it into my barn." He lets the story rest there, unfinished to the world, but complete to the soul. Some stare at the ground, tracing lines in the dirt with their toes. They understand the soil. They understand patience. They understand waiting for things to grow, good or bad. But this is different. A woman with silver in her hair wipes her eyes. She thinks of years spent trying to pull every flaw, every sin from her life, and how sometimes, in her desperation to be pure, she almost tore out what was still tender and alive within her. A young man clenches his jaw. He wants justice. He wants wrongdoers dealt with now, but the teacher is asking him to wait, to let the wheat and weeds grow in the same field for a while, to trust that judgment is not his work, but the work of the one who sees roots beneath the soil. Another man, older, runs his thumb over the handle of his walking staff. He thinks of enemies. He thinks of neighbors. He thinks of his own heart, the place where wheat and weeds wrestle quietly every day. The teacher looks at them with that calm, unshakable gaze. "The kingdom is not rushed," he says softly. "It grows in hidden places, even beside things that do not belong. You want to fix everything now, but some things must be allowed to grow before they can be separated." His words don't excuse evil. They don't praise weeds, but they remind every listener, judgment is not always the first answer. Sometimes, patience is the holiest thing a heart can offer. The sun has begun to lower by now, casting long shadows from the olive trees. The breeze carries the faint scent of figs and freshly cut hay. Somewhere in the distance, a shepherd calls to his flock. The teacher stands, brushing dust gently from his robe. His followers rise too, still holding the parable like a fragile seed inside them. Wheat and weeds, mercy and patience, trust and time. No one speaks as they begin to walk again. Ahead, a river waits, quiet, glimmering beneath the sinking sun, the kind of place where water reflects sky and hearts find room to breathe. And so they follow him, toward the whisper of flowing water, where creation itself reminds them how to be still and listen. The path leads them away from the fields and into a quiet grove where the sound of water begins to murmur through the trees. The air is cooler here, tinged with moss and damp stone. Branches arch overhead, their leaves turning amber and copper, trembling lightly in the breeze. The river winds gently through the land, neither rushing nor still, but moving with the calm certainty of something that knows where it is going. The teacher steps to the water's edge and kneels. He dips his fingers into the stream, letting the current move around his hand. The others settle nearby, some on stones, some on grass, some resting against the trunks of willow trees. No one speaks. Even the birds seem to sing more softly here, as though respectful of the water's quiet wisdom. "Listen," he says, not to silence them, but to draw their attention to something deeper. "This river does not fear the seasons." His hand moves through the water, creating small ripples. In the cold, it keeps moving beneath ice. In drought, it travels quietly through the deepest places. It does not fight the earth or ski, it simply continues. The disciples watch the stream, its surface reflecting fragments of cloud and falling leaves. He continues, "So it is with those who trust the Father. Storms may come, leaves may fall. The world may feel as though it shifts beneath your feet, but beneath it all, God remains like the river, steady, unseen, faithful." A child crouches beside him, placing a small leaf on the water. It drifts gently, swirling in circles, then glides forward, carried without effort. The teacher smiles. The leaf does not know where it is going, but the river does. Somewhere behind him, a man who has carried worry like a stone in his chest feels something loosen. A woman who has spent years trying to control every moment watches the leaf floating and wonders what it would be like to rest like that. He rises, wiping water from his fingertips. The breeze lifts a few strands of his hair. He gestures toward the current. "There are people," he says, "who try to dam the river, who try to stop what God is doing because it doesn't flow their way. They build walls out of fear, anger, pride, but the water waits or finds another path." A fisherman nods. He has seen tides refuse to obey nets, storms refuse to obey maps. He knows the futility of fighting what is greater than himself. "There are others," the teacher continues, "who drift without thought, like leaves caught in every gust of wind. They go wherever emotion, fear, or desire pushes them. They do not ask where the river is heading. They only follow the current of the crowd." The listeners shift. Some lower their eyes. They know that feeling. They've lived it. "And then," he says softly, "there are those who walk beside the river and learn its song. They do not rush it. They do not resist it. They walk in step with its rhythm." One of the disciples watches his reflection tremble on the surface and whispers, "How do we learn that song?" The teacher looks toward him, not with reprimand, but with warmth. By listening more than speaking, by trusting more than controlling, by letting the heart become soft as the banks of this river, able to be shaped. The water continues its journey, brushing past stones, roots, and reeds. It does not boast. It does not demand. It simply moves. He steps back from the shore and sits beneath a tree, its leaves just beginning to loosen from their branches. The river does not ask the leaf to be a stone, he says, and the Father does not ask you to be what you are not, but he asks you to be willing, to be shaped, to be taught. A hush settles over them. Not empty, but full of something unseen, like water beneath ice. Some close their eyes. Others watch the current. A few quietly weep. The teacher says nothing more for a while. The only sound is the river breathing against the rocks. As the sun lowers, its light glints on the water like scattered coins. A single leaf breaks free from a high branch, spinning slowly as it falls, then lands softly on the stream and begins its journey. The teacher watches it float, his expression gentle, thoughtful. There is a path beyond the river, not as smooth or quiet as this one. It leads not beside water, but inward, toward the hidden currents within the heart, and he rises to walk that way. They leave the river behind, though its quiet rhythm still beats faintly in their minds. The air grows drier as they walk, the path winding through olive trees and weathered stone. The teacher slows his steps. The crowd follows, unaware that what comes next will not be about storms or seeds or rivers, but about something harder to face, themselves. He stops near a low stone wall where autumn leaves have gathered like forgotten thoughts. He turns to them, not with accusation, but with a calm honesty that feels like light exposing a dark room. If anyone wants to see clearly, he says, they must first look within. Some glance at the ground, others frown, as though bracing for something uncomfortable. You have heard it said, he continues, to judge others by what you see, but I tell you, how can you say to your brother, let me remove the speck from your eye when there is a plank in your own? A few shift uncomfortably. Some smirk quietly, thinking of someone else this must apply to. He does not raise his voice. He does not need to. First, he says gently, remove the plank from your own eye. Then you will see clearly enough to help your brother. No one laughs now. His words land like a mirror being held up, unexpected, unrelenting. And in that mirror they see things they wish would stay hidden, jealousy, bitterness, pride dressed as righteousness. A mother pulls her shawl tighter. She thinks about how quick she is to correct her daughter, yet how long she has avoided admitting her own anger. A man with calloused hands remembers every harsh word he threw at his brother, yet how easily he called it truth. The teacher continues, do not judge with hearts that are blind, for the measure you use will be the measure returned to you. A long sigh escapes someone in the crowd, not of frustration, but of recognition. He walks a few steps and picks up a fallen leaf. It is dry, brittle, its edges curled inward. He holds it out. A heart like this cannot receive light, he says softly. But when it softens, he crumbles it gently between his fingers. It returns to the soil and can grow something new. His eyes lift to theirs. Do not be afraid to see what is inside you. The Father already sees and does not turn away. A soft breeze moves through the trees, loosening more leaves from branches. They drift silently to the ground, each one different, each one falling in its own time. He sits on the stone wall, and they gather closer. Ask, he says, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be opened. A child looks up, curious. An older man tilts his head. He smiles. Which of you, if your child asks for bread, would give a stone? Or if they ask for a fish, would give a snake? A few chuckle softly. If you, though imperfect, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give to those who ask? His words do not excuse their faults. They reveal that love is not withdrawn because of them. He leans forward slightly. So when you stand before someone who has wronged you, remember, your heart is also in need of mercy. The crowd grows still. Self-examination, he teaches them, is not shame. It is the beginning of freedom. Silence settles around them, not heavy but thoughtful, the kind of silence that invites reflection rather than fear. Someone wipes a tear they did not expect. Another grips their walking stick tighter, as though steadiness is returning to their bones. The river behind them is out of sight now, but inside, a similar current begins to move. Quiet, persistent, cleansing. The teacher stands, brushing dust from his robe. The sun is lowering, casting long shadows across the stones at their feet. Light and shadow together, just like the truth within them. Ahead lies another step, not just seeing what is broken, but allowing it to be restored. So they rise and follow, toward the place where confession becomes healing, where the weight of guilt meets the mercy of the teacher who does not turn away. They walk quietly now, the weight of self-reflection still resting on their shoulders. No one speaks loudly, no one argues. The mirror of the soul has done its work, and the silence that follows is not empty. It is tender, like soil after rain. The teacher leads them to a small clearing just beyond a cluster of fig trees. The ground here is soft with fallen leaves, and the air carries the faint scent of wood smoke from a village nearby. He sits beneath a tree whose branches bend low, as though listening. People gather around him, but at a distance, uncertain, humbled. It's easier to follow him when he speaks of storms and miracles, harder when he speaks of them, of hearts, of pride, of hidden things. Then a sound. Footsteps, hurried, uneven. A man appears from the edge of the clearing. His clothes are torn. His face is flushed, streaked with dirt and tears. His chest rises and falls with the effort of someone who has run a long way, not from danger, but from shame. He doesn't stand with the others. He falls to his knees. "Teacher," he says, voice cracking, "I have sinned, against heaven, against others. I'm not worthy." But before he can finish, the teacher rises. He does not step back. He steps closer. There is no anger in his eyes, only a sadness that holds room for love. He kneels beside the man in the leaves. He places a hand on his shoulder, not light enough to be pity, not heavy enough to be punishment, just steady. "Do you wish to return?" the teacher asks. The man nods, unable to lift his head. "Then stand," the teacher says softly. I don't deserve." "Return is not about deserving," the teacher says, his voice like water smoothing stone. "It is about coming home." Slowly, the man rises. His legs tremble. His voice fails, but he stands. No one moves. No one breathes too loudly. They watch forgiveness in motion, not as an idea, but as a touch, a look, a lifting of what was too heavy to carry alone. The teacher brushes the dirt from the man's shoulders, the way a father might for a child who has wandered too far into the fields. "There is more joy in heaven over one who comes back," he says, "than over 99 who never left." A few gasp quietly. Some wipe their eyes. Then he tells a story, not to shame, but to reveal. "There was a father," he begins, "who had 2 sons. They know this story even before it ends. A son who ran away, a father who waited, a return not met with punishment, but with open arms, a robe, a ring, a feast. A brother who could not understand why grace tastes sweeter than fairness. And while he was still a long way off," the teacher says, "his father saw him and ran to him." He lets the words hover, like the last note of a song. The man who had knelt now stands quietly to the side, tears streaking his cheeks, but his shoulders no longer shaking. The other listeners glance at him, not with judgment, but with something gentler, as though seeing him has shown them something about themselves. The teacher looks at the crowd. "Some of you are like the son who left. You think you've gone too far to return." His eyes soften. "You have not." He lets his gaze move across others. "Some of you are like the older brother. You have stayed, but your heart has forgotten mercy." No one speaks. Fallen leaves shift in a breeze. The sky glows amber with the slow approach of evening. He lifts his voice one last time. "Return is not a step backward," he says. "It is the beginning of healing." The man who confessed is not dismissed, nor hidden. He simply walks among them again, not different in appearance, but changed in weight, like someone who has set down a heavy pack. The others begin to understand. Confession is not an exit from grace. It is the doorway into it. The teacher turns toward the path again. Ahead, more people wait. People not only in need of forgiveness, but of healing in body and spirit. The leaves rustle overhead as if whispering that the world itself is ready, ready for mending. And so, with quiet steps and lighter hearts, they follow him toward the place where wounds are not ignored, but touched by gentle hands. Word spreads quickly, faster than footsteps, faster than doubt. By the time the teacher reaches the next village, people are already gathering along the road, their eyes carrying the quiet hope of those who have run out of options but still dare to believe. Mothers clutch feverish children. Old men lean on staffs, their joints swollen and stiff. Others hide bandaged wounds beneath their cloaks, unsure if they should come closer or stay unseen. He does not turn away from any of them. One by one, they come. A child with trembling breaths is brought forward first. The mother kneels, whispering through tears, "Please." The teacher places his hand lightly upon the child's forehead. No ritual, no spectacle, just touch, warm and steady. The child's breathing softens. The fever calms like wind settling after a storm. The mother gasps, her hands flying to her mouth as if afraid to speak joy too soon. Next, a man with a twisted leg hobbles forward on crutches carved from broken branches. He does not ask to be healed, he only asks to be seen. The teacher looks at him, truly sees him, then reaches down and lifts him gently by the arm. The man's leg straightens beneath him. He stands. His crutches fall to the dust like old memories no longer needed. He takes a step, another, then laughs, a sound rough from disuse, but alive. People begin to press closer. A woman with trembling hands reaches for the edge of his garment, just a touch, just a thread. Her fingers brush the fabric quietly, as though afraid to be noticed. But he knows. He turns, not to scold, but to meet her eyes. "Your faith has made you well," he says, and the shaking leaves her body like a shadow chased away by light. Soon they come not in ones, but in dozens, each carrying pain in different forms. A blind man with eyes clouded like stormed glass. A young girl unable to walk since birth. A soldier whose hearing vanished after battle. The teacher moves among them, not like a ruler, but like a shepherd gathering lost things. To the blind man he speaks softly, touching his lids with gentle fingers. "Open your eyes." The man blinks, shapes form, then faces, then light itself. He falls to his knees, not because he is blind, but because he can see. To the girl, he kneels and smiles. "Little one, arise." Her toes stretch, her legs wake. She stands, then walks, timidly at first, as though the earth beneath her feet might vanish. But it holds. She runs to her mother, who breaks like a clay jar overflowing with joy. To the soldier, he places hands over his ears. No dramatic gesture, just quiet authority. The world returns in sound, the rush of wind, the murmur of water, the faint laughter of children. He presses a hand to his chest, overwhelmed by the simple gift of hearing leaves rustle again. No one is turned away. Not the poor, not the unclean, not the one society calls unworthy. He cleanses wounds. He speaks peace. He kneels with the broken as though he has all the time in the world. There is no impatience in him. No frustration with how many come. His compassion does not thin. It deepens. Somewhere behind the crowd, a few religious leaders watch with narrowed eyes. They see power, but not love. They see crowds, but not hearts. Yet he pays them no mind. His hands continue to heal. His voice continues to soothe. As evening approaches, the air cools. Torches are lit. Still, the people come. Some are not sick in body, but their souls limp under the weight of guilt, fear, loneliness. He does not turn from them either. He speaks words not only for broken bones, but for broken spirits. "Come to me, all who are weary," he says, "and I will give you rest." And they believe him, not because he demands it, but because rest feels near when he speaks. The last child is carried forward just as the sky turns the color of dying embers. A small boy, eyes closed, breath faint. He kneels beside him, places a hand on his chest, and whispers something only the father hears. The boy's chest rises. Slowly. Then again. His eyes flutter open. The crowd exhales like a single living thing. Night spreads its dark blanket across the sky, but no one leaves unchanged. Some carry healed bodies, some carry lighter hearts, some carry questions. He rises, weary yet peaceful, not from power spent, but from love poured out. Ahead lies a hill, and under its quiet snit he will speak, not of sickness, but of the kind of hunger no bread can fill. And so they follow, hearts open, needing more than healing. They need meaning. Morning light stretches across the hillside, soft and golden, warming the dew that clings to the blades of grass. The people come early, some limping, some leaning on one another, others carrying children still half asleep against their shoulders. They have no plan except to be near him. They do not bring much, just hope and empty hands. By midday, the hillside is full. Thousands sit on the grass in clusters. Families, strangers, widows, fishermen, scholars, children chasing grasshoppers between stones. The teacher moves among them, speaking gently, healing quietly, listening to stories that others would dismiss. The sun climbs higher, stomachs begin to ache with hunger. No one brought enough. His disciples notice first. "Send them away," one suggests, scanning the countless faces. "Let them go to the villages to buy food." The teacher looks at the crowd, dusty feet, tired faces, quiet hunger, and says simply, "They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat." The words hang in the air like an impossible command. They look at one another, count the coins in their belts. Not enough, not even close. Andrew gestures to a boy nearby, shyly clutching a small bundle wrapped in cloth. "There's a child here with 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish," he says. "But what is that for so many?" The teacher does not answer with despair. He answers with calm. "Bring them here to me." The boy hesitates only a moment before placing the food in his hands. It isn't much. Bread rough and plain, fish salted and small, but it is everything he has, and the teacher receives it as though it were treasure. He asks the people to sit. The grass becomes their table, the open sky their ceiling, the autumn breeze their companion. He takes the loaves and looks up, not at the crowd, not at the problem, but at the Father. "Thank you," he says. No thunder answers, no angels appear, just bread in his hands, blessed in the presence of the hungry. Then he begins to break it, piece after piece, loaf after loaf, fish after fish. He gives to the disciples, who give to the people, and the people pass it to one another. It moves through the crowd like a quiet miracle, not loud, not dramatic, just enough, more than enough. Mothers tear pieces for their children. Old men chew slowly, as though tasting hope for the first time in years. The boy who shared his food watches, wide-eyed, as his small offering becomes a feast. The bread never runs out. The fish never diminishes. Hands keep receiving. Bellies keep filling. Laughter begins to rise across the hill, soft at first, then bold, like birds taking flight. Soon, no one is hungry, not a single person. The teacher looks over them, satisfaction in his eyes. Not because of the miracle itself, but because hunger has been met with kindness instead of dismissal. He tells his disciples, "Gather the leftovers, so nothing is wasted." They walk among the people with woven baskets and return with 12 full, heavy with bread fragments and fish, more left over than what they began with. Somewhere in the crowd, a woman whispers, "Who is this? Who feeds thousands with what could barely feed one?" Another answers softly, "Maybe this is the one the prophets wrote about." But he does not seek their praise. He does not raise his hands and shout of power. He simply walks among them, checking the faces, smiling at the children, making sure even the smallest has eaten. The sun begins to dip low, painting the sky in strokes of amber and rose. People linger, reluctant to leave. The hillside feels like something sacred has touched it, like heaven leaned close enough to breathe on the dust. The boy whose bread was multiplied clutches one of the leftover baskets, a gift given back to the one who gave first. He looks at the teacher, and their eyes meet. No words are spoken, none are needed. As evening settles, the teacher steps away toward the quiet edge of the hill, where the wind brushes gently against the tall grass. He stands there, looking out. Not at the miracle, but at the hearts behind it. Because bread can fill the stomach, but only truth can fill the soul. And soon he will speak of a different kind of bread, one not made from grain or held in baskets, one that satisfies a deeper hunger, the kind that no earthly meal can quiet. The crowd finishes their last bites of bread. They do not yet know. They will hunger again. And he is ready to tell them why. Evening settles gently over the hills, but the people do not leave. Some are still holding pieces of bread. Others sit with full stomachs and quiet eyes. The miracle still lingers on their tongues. Not just the taste of loaves and fish, but the feeling of being seen, fed, and counted. No one expected to be satisfied, yet they are. The teacher stands at the edge of the crowd, watching them, not with pride, but with a deep, searching tenderness. He knows they are full now, but he also knows this hunger will return. He walks a few steps up the hill where the breeze moves through the tall grass. His disciples follow, uncertain but attentive, their clothes brushed by the cool breath of dusk. It is then he speaks, not in the tone of a miracle worker, but of someone inviting them beyond the miracle. "You are looking for me," he says, "not because you saw the signs, but because you ate the bread and were filled." Some lower their heads, others clutch their cloaks tighter. "Do not work for food that spoils," he continues, "but for the food that endures to eternal life, food the Son of Man will give you." A murmur flows through the crowd, food that never perishes, bread that never molds, never runs out. They lean forward. "What must we do," someone calls, "to do the works God requires?" "The work of God is this," the teacher replies, "to believe in the one he has sent." Some stare at him as though belief should be harder, as though work should look like sweat, sacrifice, effort, not trust. Still unsure, another voice rises. "Then show us a sign so we may believe. Our ancestors ate manna in the wilderness, bread from heaven." He looks at them gently. "It was not Moses who gave them bread from heaven," he says, "but my Father who gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is the one who comes down from heaven and gives life to the world." Their eyes widen, hearts quicken. "Sir, give us this bread always," they beg. He takes a breath, the kind that reaches into eternity, and says words they do not expect. "I am the bread of life." Silence spreads, thick as mist. "Whoever comes to me will never hunger," he continues. "Whoever believes in me will never thirst." Some are stunned. Some are drawn in like moths to light. Others feel a sting they cannot name. He keeps going, softly, but with the unwavering certainty of truth. "You have seen me, and yet you do not believe. All that the Father gives me will come to me, and whoever comes to me, I will never cast out." He speaks of purpose, of heaven, of being sent not to condemn but to save. His voice does not waver. "And this is the will of him who sent me," he says, "that I should lose none of those he has given me, but raise them up on the last day." The people are listening, but not all are understanding. Some feel comfort curl around their souls like a blanket. Others feel the ground shift beneath them. He speaks again, deeper still. "I am the living bread that came down from heaven. Whoever eats this bread will live forever." Confusion ripples through the crowd. "How can this man give us bread from heaven?" someone mutters. "Isn't this Jesus, the carpenter's son? We know his mother, we know his brothers," another whispers, but he does not soften the words. "This bread is my flesh, which I will give for the life of the world." The wind stills. The leaves above them hold their breath. This is no longer about hunger in the stomach. This is about hunger in the soul, hunger for forgiveness, meaning, belonging, life beyond death. Some eyes fill with faith, some narrow with doubt, some hearts begin to divide. The sun dips lower, casting long shadows across the hillside. He steps back, allowing his words to rest on them like seeds on soil. Some will take root, some will not. And just as day gives way to twilight, voices begin to stir. Not in wonder this time, but in argument. Because not everyone is ready for a bread they cannot hold in their hands. The night has not fully arrived, yet the light has thinned enough that faces look carved from dusk. The crowd that ate their fill now circles him again, but the warmth of bread has cooled into questions. Voices rise, not with praise, but with unease that scrapes the air like flint on stone. "How can this man give us his flesh to eat?" someone says, not to him, but to the fringe where complaints feel safer. Another answers with a scoff. "We know his family. He is no mystery." The teacher does not chase the mutterings. He stands as steady as a tree that has learned the language of wind. When he speaks, it is not to win the argument, but to tell the truth. "Unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood," he says, "you have no life in you." A gasp. A wave of offended silence. Hands fold across chests, eyes harden. This is not the miracle they wanted. This is not the kingdom they imagined. one that feeds the belly and leaves the soul politely untouched. He continues, voice gentle, words unyielding. My flesh is true food, and my blood is true drink. Whoever feeds on me and drinks from me remains in me, and I in them. As the living Father sent me, and I live because of the Father, so whoever feeds on me will live because of me. It is too much for some, too intimate, too costly, too holy for the neat shelves of their certainty. A woman stares at the ground as if the dirt could explain him. A young man laughs once, harshly, then turns away. Someone shakes his head and mutters, "This teaching is hard. Who can accept it?" He hears them. He always does. He looks upon their restlessness the way a physician studies a wound that refuses the salve. "Does this offend you?" he asks. "Then what if you were to see the Son of Man ascending to where he was before? It is the Spirit who gives life. The flesh is no help at all. The words I have spoken to, you are spirit and life." Somewhere in the crowd, a few hearts catch flame. Most do not. The miracle of multiplied bread was simple to receive, hands open, mouths filled. But this is different. This requires a hunger that admits, I cannot live on myself. He does not bargain. He does not dilute. He lets freedom do its sacred work. From that time, someone will say later, many of his disciples turned back and no longer walked with him. They begin to leave, not all at once, not in anger stampede, but in a trickle that becomes a stream. Pairs, families, the confident and the cautious. Some pause as if waiting for him to call them back with easier words. He does not. The field of faces thins. The dusk grows. The sound of footsteps becomes its own kind of sermon. When truth asks for the whole heart, the heart must decide what it loves most. He turns to the 12. There is no desperation in him, only a question that opens the soul like a door. Do you also want to go away? Silence holds them. They know the cost. They have counted it poorly and counted it again. They have seen storms fold at his whisper, bread bloom in his hands, the blind blink into scowl. They have also seen him refuse crowns, refuse shortcuts, refuse to flatter what enslaves. Simon Peter's voice arrives like a rough, honest prayer. Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. We have believed and have come to know that you are the Holy One of God. It is not eloquence. It is hunger speaking plainly. The teacher's eyes rest on them, on Peter, on the ones whose faith is a candle shaking in wind yet unextinguished. There is sorrow in his gaze for those who left, tenderness for those who remain, and a depth beyond both that seems to watch a horizon no one else can see. He nods once, as if agreeing with the simplest confession a human can make. There is nowhere else to go for life but you. A handful still stand nearby, the poor, the healed, the curious, the ashamed, those who wanted a king of bread and found instead a savior who asks for the heart. They linger at the edges as if proximity might do the believing for them. It will not. He dismisses the crowd with a blessing that is more like a benediction than a farewell. No bitterness curdles his words, no triumph flares in his tone. He has told them what is true. Love does not force. The hillside exhales. Torches bloom along the path to town like small, uncertain stars. People descend with murmurs and the shuffle of sandals, their conversations scattering like chaff in crosswind. Some angry, some aching, some unwilling to admit how his words have followed them into the secret rooms of their hunger. The 12 remain, softer voiced now, as if loudness might break something fragile inside their chests. Andrew rubs breadcrumbs from his fingers, remembering how they didn't run out. John watches the teacher's face in the failing light, as one watches the sea for signs of tide. They sense it before he speaks. The pull that comes upon him after crowds and clamor. The ache for sky and solitude, where the Father's voice is not a memory but a present warmth. He looks toward the ridge beyond the olive trees, where night gathers in quiet folds. Rest, he tells them. I will return. There is no drama in the promise, no oath, only the same unhurried certainty with which he calmed the sea and broke the loaves. They nod. Some make a small fire. Others sit with knees drawn up, speaking in whispers too low to carry. A few watch him go, a lone figure moving through the dim, past the last low wall and the sleeping vineyard, until the shape of him becomes one more shadow among shadows. Above, The first real stars appear, pricking the blue like seeds sown into a vast dark field. He walks toward quiet. The earth cools underfoot. The wind is a thin thread through the branches. Somewhere ahead, a high place waits, the kind where prayers feel less like words and more like breath. He climbs without hurry, the way a son comes home. Night stretches across the land like a deep blue cloak, and the last whispers of the crowd fade into the distance. Only the rustle of leaves and the soft pulse of crickets remain. The teacher walks alone now, away from questions, away from hungry eyes, up toward the quiet place where the earth touches heaven. His sandals press into the damp soil of the hillside. The wind picks up, brushing past him, carrying the smell of cedar and cool stone. Above, the stars bloom like scattered seeds sown across the sky, silent, ancient witnesses. He reaches a flat place among the rocks, where the world below is only a faint shimmer of distant torches and sleeping rooftops. Here, he kneels. No one hears what he says. No one needs to. His lips move, but his prayer is not born of fear. It is not a plea to escape what is coming. It is a conversation between son and father, carried upward on the breath of night. He prays for those who left him, for those who stayed, for those who don't yet understand why his words cut so deep. He prays for hearts that are soil, some hard, some shallow, some tangled, some ready. The wind stirs again, sweeping through his hair like a whisper of unseen wings. Below, the disciples settle beside their small fire. They speak quietly at first, then not at all. The hillside feels different tonight, too still, too wide. Peter pokes the embers with a stick, watching sparks float up before fading. John sits with knees pulled to his chest, glancing now and then toward the dark shape of the upper path, as though making sure their teacher is still there. "He always comes back," Andrew murmurs. Thomas doesn't respond. His brow is furrowed, eyes fixed on the darkness. He is thinking of bread, of blood, of words that taste too sharp to swallow. He is thinking of how belief can feel like trying to catch wind in clenched fists. Up above, the teacher remains on his knees. The night grows colder. Dew gathers on the stones. A leaf detaches from a branch and falls quietly beside him. Another follows. Soon the hillside becomes a gentle rain of gold and rust, autumn offering its surrender to the earth. His prayer deepens. He speaks of the cross no one else sees forming in the distance. He speaks of betrayal from hands he has washed. He speaks of love, relentless, unbreaking, love that will not stop, even when nails come. No one stands beside him. No voice answers from clouds. But peace, real, steady, alive, wraps around him like a cloak. He rises slowly, placing a hand on the rough surface of a nearby stone. His eyes travel over the sleeping world below, the fields, the olive groves, the small dots of firelight where his friends rest. He breathes in the night as though receiving strength from it. This stillness is not escape, it is preparation. He steps forward to sit on a larger rock, watching the horizon. The moon casts silver across the land, painting the river, the trees, even the distant boats left at shore. His face is calm, not untouched by grief, but anchored in purpose. Somewhere below, a wolf howls. A dog answers. The wind sighs through the branches. Nothing is hurried. The world seems to pause with him, as though waiting. The disciples doze, one by one. The fire dims. Their cloaks pull tighter around their shoulders. A few remain awake, but their thoughts drift. Of storms calmed, bread multiplied, teachings that unsettle and heal at the same time. Far up the hill, the teacher remains awake. He watches a star fall across the sky and disappear into the darkness. His thoughts linger not on his own suffering, but on theirs. On the day their faith will be shaken, on the moment their hearts will break as the world rejects the very one who came to heal it. Yet even that does not shake him, because beyond the breaking, he sees the mending. Beyond the cross, he sees an empty tomb. Beyond the fear, he sees fire, spreading, burning, awakening. A faint line of silver touches the horizon. Dawn is near. He remains still a little longer, letting the final veil of night rest on his shoulders. And when the first bird begins to sing, a quiet smile touches his face. The night of prayer is ending. The day of purpose begins to stir. Morning has not yet broken, but the lake already stirs. Thin mist drifts over the surface like breath on glass, soft and weightless. The sky is still a deep blue, only beginning to pale at the edges. In the distance, a small boat moves slowly across the water, its lantern swaying, the figures inside silent and tired. The disciples are rowing. Their arms ache, their clothes cling damp against their skin. Every oar stroke sounds louder in the quiet, wood against water, wood against water. They are alone in the middle of the lake, and he is not with them. He stayed behind on the mountain. They left only because he insisted. Now the wind begins to rise. It comes from the east, cold and sharp, pushing against the boat's worn sides. Waves begin to slap against the hull, not violent, but persistent, enough to make their hearts uneasy, enough to remind them of another storm, another night, another fear. John looks toward the horizon, nothing but dark water. Peter grips the oar tighter. "Keep rowing," he mutters. Thomas, quieter. "He said he'd meet us, didn't he?" No one answers. The world is a blur of shadows and water. Their hands are blistered. Their faith feels thin. Then, out on the lake, something moves. At first, they think it's mist shifting, then a shape, a figure, walking, not waiting, not swimming, walking. Their breath catches, hearts pound. "It's a spirit," someone chokes out, but the figure keeps coming, steady, sure-footed on the waves as though the water itself holds its breath beneath him. Then, his voice. "Take courage. It is I. Do not be afraid." It isn't loud, yet it cuts through wind and water like light through fog. Peter squints into the dim light. "Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you on the water." A pause. A small smile. "Come." Peter steps over the side. For a heartbeat, the water holds him. His feet do not sink. His body does not fall. He walks, one step, then another, away from the boat, toward the one whose voice steadies storms and hearts alike. But then the wind roars louder. The water shivers under him. Fear floods back in waves sharper than the cold. His eyes drop from the teacher to the dark beneath. He starts to sink. "Lord, save me!" Before the water can claim him, a hand reaches out, strong, warm, pulling him back to breath, back to air, back to life. "You of little faith," the teacher says softly, not mocking, mourning what fear steals. "Why did you doubt?" They step into the boat together. The wind stops. The water calms. The lake becomes a mirror again, holding the first hint of dawn in its stillness. No one speaks at first. They only stare at him. The one who walks where no man should walk, who speaks and nature bows, who reaches into storms and lifts them out. And then, one by one, they fall to their knees. Not from fear now, from awe. They whisper words no fisherman has ever spoken on this lake. "Truly, you are the Son of God." Their voices are hushed like prayer. He does not ask for worship. He simply receives it, quietly, humbly, like he receives broken bread, broken hearts, broken men. The sky brightens, lavender, rose, pale gold. The first birds begin to sing. The boat drifts gently toward shore, carried now not by fear or effort, but by still water and morning wind. None of them can shake what they saw. Feet on water, calm born from command, a hand extended in the dark. When they reach land, others are already gathering, sick, weary, desperate. Word spreads, he has returned. Some come running, others come crawling, all come hungry. But the disciples, they come changed, because you cannot unsee a man walking on water. And you cannot unknow the truth that follows. If he can stand above the storm, then maybe, just maybe, he can teach a heart to do the same. The sun has fully risen now, warm and gentle across the land. Morning light rests on rooftops, vineyards, stone roads, and on those who wait. Some standing, some sitting, some carried on mats by trembling friends. Word has spread that the teacher has returned from the hills and crossed the water, and wherever he walks, the broken gather, as though their wounds are drawn to him like rivers to the sea. A group of men arrives, guiding a blind man between them. His eyes are clouded, pale like the mist before dawn. He stumbles once, reaches out and whispers, "Is he near?" "Just ahead," one of them answers, steadying his arm. They bring him close. The crowd quiets. He cannot see the faces around him, but he feels their breath, their stillness. He lifts his chin slightly. "Teacher, I want to see." There is no trembling in his voice, only longing. The teacher steps forward. He does not ask for proof of faith. He does not demand a reason. He places his hands lightly over the man's eyes, not pressing, not forcing, just resting there like sunlight on closed windows. Open them. The man blinks. Once, twice. Light pours in. Shapes become colors. Colors become faces. Faces become tears and smiles. He sees. Not just sky and trees and dust, but people, friends, strangers, the teacher standing right in front of him. His mouth opens, but no words come. Only a sound, half laughter, half sob. The crowd exhales as though they've been holding their breath for years. But the teacher does not stop there. Later that day, another man approaches, brought by friends who will not let him stay in darkness. He is blind too, but not only in sight. His heart is heavy, bitter, clenched tight against hope. He mutters, "I don't want pity." The teacher looks at him, long enough that the man shifts under the weight of being known. "I do not give pity," he says. "I give sight." He leads the man away from the crowd to where the trees cast long shadows and the wind carries the scent of figs. He kneels, takes earth and spit, mixes them gently into clay, and presses it on the man's eyes. "Go," he says. "Wash in the pool." Some scoff at the simplicity, others wait. The man walks slowly, guided by memory and trembling hands. He kneels beside the pool, dips his fingers into the water, and washes his face. Coolness. Silence. Then, light. He gasps. Ripples in the water reflect his own eyes looking back, clear, alive, seeing for the first time. He returns running. Leaves crunch beneath his feet. Tears streak his cheeks. "I can see," he cries. "I can see." Some rejoice. Others question. A few whisper, "It cannot be him." But the teacher just watches him with a soft knowing. Because sight is more than eyes. Sight is the heart finally recognizing truth when it stands in front of you. That evening, as the sun bleeds softly across the sky, the teacher sits beneath a tree. A few disciples gather near. "Master," one says, "why do some see and others stay blind?" He looks out toward the horizon where the sky meets the hills. "Sight is given," he says, "but some close their eyes on purpose. Light is offered, but some prefer the dark because it hides what they love too much to let go." They fall silent. The leaves above them rustle like quiet agreement. He continues, voice low, almost a whisper. "But blessed are those who see. Not with eyes alone, but with hearts willing to receive truth." A young disciple asks, "How do we keep our eyes open?" The teacher picks up a small stone, rolling it between his fingers. "By choosing," he says gently, "what you treasure. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And what the heart loves most, the eyes will learn to see." The wind quiets. Somewhere in the village, a lamp is lit inside a home. Then another, then another. Warm circles of light appear in windows as night slowly approaches. The disciples sit with his words, letting them sink like seeds into soil. Sight, it seems, is not only a miracle, it is a test. What will they look at? What will they pursue? What will they value? The teacher rises. The last of the sunlight fades, leaving the world in shades of silver and shadow. Tomorrow he will speak again, not of eyes, but of treasure, of hearts, of what people cling to and what they lose when they refuse to let go. And the ones who truly see will follow him still. The morning air is crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and damp earth. Autumn has deepened overnight. Trees that were once green now burn in gold and rust, shedding what they can no longer hold. The teacher walks along a narrow path through a hillside orchard, and those who follow feel as though the world itself is quietly teaching beside him. A gust of wind scatters dry leaves across their feet. Some catch in the folds of his cloak, others drift into the brook below. He pauses, watching as they float and sink. "Everything you see," he says softly, "will one day fade." They look at the leaves, the fruit trees, the worn stone walls. Even the beauty around them carries the whisper of ending. He stoops, lifting a fallen leaf, its veins delicate as thread, its color rich but brittle. This leaf was once full of life, drinking sunlight, but even it cannot stay forever. Some nod slowly. Others only watch. He continues walking, the leaf still in his hand. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. His voice is not stern. It is tender, almost sorrowful, like someone reminding a friend not to hold too tightly to sand. They pass by a vineyard where grapes hang heavy on the vine, some already shriveling, forgotten. Workers gather the best of them into baskets, but birds peck it. Those left behind. Store up treasure in heaven, he says, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. Matthew, who once counted coins for a living, lowers his eyes. He knows how quickly money can disappear, and how even when it stays, it never satisfies the deepest hunger. They arrive at a stone wall overlooking the valley. From here, they can see everything: the fields, the market tents, the rooftops of the town, smoke curling from the chimneys. The teacher places the brittle leaf gently on the wall. For where your treasure is, he says quietly, there your heart will be also. A silence settles, heavy, thoughtful. A merchant in the crowd runs a thumb over the small pouch of coins at his side. A mother glances at her children, wondering if she's been clinging too tightly out of fear. A young man clutches the handle of a tool, wondering what it means to build something that lasts longer than stone. The teacher looks toward the horizon, gray clouds gathering, light fading from the hills. The eye, he says, is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are clear, your whole body is full of light. But if your eyes are clouded, how deep is that darkness? Behind him, a group of Pharisees watches from a distance. Their robes are fine, their expressions unreadable. They carry scrolls, laws, and the weight of many expectations. You cannot serve two masters, the teacher says, turning back to the people. You cannot serve God and wealth. His words are firm, but not cruel. They carry the ache of someone who knows how easily hearts become divided. Down below, in the marketplace, traders call out prices. Bronze coins change hands. Someone haggles over fish. Another hides extra grain beneath a cloth when no one is looking. Life goes on, as it always has. Yet something feels different to those on the hill. They begin to see their possessions not as evil, but as temporary. They begin to hear the creak of their barns, the clink of coins, the rust of tools, not as security, but as reminders that nothing in their hands will last. A child sitting at the teacher's feet picks up the fallen leaf and holds it gently. If everything dies, she asks quietly, does anything stay? He kneels beside her, lifting her chin so she meets his eyes. Yes, he says. What is given in love, what is done in faith, what is entrusted to the Father, these remain. The child smiles, clutching the leaf like a promise. The teacher rises, looking out once more over the land. The sun slips behind the clouds. The wind grows colder, rattling branches now nearly bare. The people wait, sensing he will speak again, not of leaves or coins, but of a danger far greater than hunger or storms, a danger that grows slowly, quietly, inside the heart. And he begins to walk toward it. The path winds past golden fields where wheat sways like a sea beneath the late afternoon light. Some stalks have already been harvested. Others wait, heavy with grain. The teacher walks slowly, his hand brushing the tips of the tall grass. The people follow behind him, quiet after hearing of treasures in heaven, their thoughts tangled between fear and understanding. He stops near a lone fig tree and turns to face them. Be on your guard, he says, against all kinds of greed. A person's life does not consist in the abundance of their possessions. A murmur passes through the group. Some shift their feet. A few clutch their coin pouches as if by instinct. Then he begins to tell a story. The land of a rich man produced abundantly, he says. They picture it easily. Barns full to bursting, fields thick with sheaves of wheat, servants stacking grain higher than they can reach. A man counting, measuring, smiling at all he owns. The teacher continues. He thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. A few listeners smirk. What a problem to have. So he said, this is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. And there I will store all my grain and all my goods. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy. Eat, drink, be merry. Some in the crowd nod quietly, as if this sounds wise, safe, logical, but the teacher's tone shifts, soft but unbearably clear. But God said to him, "You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will receive what you have prepared for yourself?" A heavy silence falls. Not one leaf moves in the branches above. Not one person dares to cough or shift. He looks at them, at every worried face, every clenched hand, and says, "This is how it will be for anyone who stores up treasure for themselves, but is not rich toward God." No one argues, because deep down they know a full barn cannot stop death. A swollen purse cannot buy peace. A heart chained to possessions cannot hold heaven. An old farmer at the edge of the crowd lowers his head. He remembers the years he measured his worth by how many fields he owned. A young merchant bites his lip, thinking of his locked storeroom back home, how he checks it twice each night just to be sure. The teacher does not move on immediately. He lets the story sit like a stone in still water, sinking into places nothing else can reach. Then, softly, he speaks again, his voice almost like a breeze stirring dying leaves. "Do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you will wear. Life is more than food, and the body more than clothes." He gestures toward the sky. "Look at the ravens. They do not sow or reap. They have no storeroom or barn, yet your Father feeds them, and you are worth more than many birds." His eyes shift to the hillside, where wildflowers grow between the stones. "Consider the lilies. They do not labor or spin, yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all his glory was dressed like one of these." The people follow his gaze. Flowers, fragile, short-lived, unnoticed by kings, yet clothed in beauty greater than any robe. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today, and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, he says, will he not much more clothe you, you of little faith? The words don't scold, they grieve. He steps forward, gentler now. "So do not set your heart on what you will eat or drink. Do not be anxious, for the world runs after such things, and your Father knows you need them." Another pause. The wind shifts. Someone exhales shakily. "But seek his kingdom," he says, "and these things will be added to you." A few eyes lift. Something in them softens. He smiles, not wide, not grand, just a quiet warmth. "Do not be afraid, little flock. Your Father has been pleased to give you the kingdom." Behind him, a barn stands on a distant hill, weathered wood, silent testimony to a man who thought grain could save him. Ahead of him lies a road where hearts must choose between clenched fists and open hands. He turns and begins to walk, not toward riches but toward simplicity, where freedom waits for those willing to carry less. They continue walking along the path that overlooks the valley, where wild grasses bend in the breeze and ravens circle lazily in the sky. The teacher slows his steps, allowing the crowd to gather around him once more. Their faces still carry the weight of his last words: barns, death, treasure that cannot be stored in earth. Some are silent, others glance at their hands as if questioning what they have been clinging to. He stops at a patch of lilies growing in a crack between rocks, fragile yet radiant, their petals open to the sun without hesitation. "Look at these," he says quietly. They follow his gaze, simple flowers, no gold, no silk, yet they glow as though the morning itself chose them for a crown. "They do not work. They do not spin thread or weave cloth," he continues. "And yet I tell you, not even Solomon, in all his splendor, was dressed like one of these." The people remember stories of Solomon, the gold, the throne, the temples. Yet here stands beauty untouched by wealth or worry. If God so clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, he says, will he not much more clothe you, O you of little faith? His voice is not sharp. It carries grief, compassion, and a quiet plea. As though he is not upset, they worry, only heartbroken that they think they are alone in the world. A raven caws overhead. It glides on the wind, wings wide, unhurried. "Look at the birds," he says, pointing upward. "They do not sow or reap. They have no storeroom or barn, yet your Father feeds them." Several children tilt their heads back, watching the birds float above them without fear of tomorrow. "You are worth so much more than they," he says softly. A woman in the crowd lets out, a breath she didn't realize she was holding. Beside her, a man unclenches his hands from the leather purse he's been gripping tightly. Which of you by worrying can add a single hour to your life? The teacher asks. No one answers. Because they all know, worry adds nothing except weariness. He steps closer to them now, voice low, steady. Do not set your heart on what you will eat or drink. Do not be anxious. The nations run after such things, and your Father knows you need them. He pauses, letting those words settle. Your Father knows. Not a distant deity, not an indifferent ruler, a Father. But seek his kingdom, he says, and these things will be given to you as well. The wind lifts a few petals from the lilies and carries them into the air, weightless. Then comes the gentlest command of all. Do not be afraid, little flock, he says. Your Father has been pleased to give you the kingdom. A quiet stirs among the people, not noise, but something inside loosening. Fear doesn't vanish, but it is no longer as loud as before. He speaks again, soft but firm. Sell your possessions and give to the poor. Provide purses for yourselves that will not wear out, treasure in heaven that will not be stolen, and where moth cannot destroy. A few gasp. Not because it is harsh, but because it is clear. For where your treasure is, he says, there your heart will be also. A shepherd nearby looks down at the staff in his hands, not because he plans to abandon his flock, but because he wonders who his heart serves. A young woman touches the small clay jar of coins tied beneath her belt. She thinks not of losing it, but of what holding it too tightly is turning her into. The teacher looks at them all, at the poor, the wealthy, the healed, the doubtful, the weary. The air is still. Even the ravens are quiet. Trust, that is what he is asking. Not passivity, not recklessness. Trust, like lilies opening to light they did not earn. Trust, like ravens soaring on wind they didn't create. Trust, like a child knowing bread will be given before she even asks. He begins to walk again. The path curves into olive trees and scattered stone homes where lamplight is just beginning to appear in small windows. Some follow him with lighter steps. Others walk slower now, counting the cost. But all of them know something has shifted. Faith is no longer an idea. It has become a choice. And soon he will speak of servants waiting for their master, not with fear, but with readiness, waiting not with clenched fists, but open hands. The path narrows as they enter a stand of olive trees, the ground soft with fallen leaves that give a faint, peppery scent when crushed underfoot. Light slips through the branches in thin ribbons. The teacher walks slowly, letting the hush gather again, letting breath return to those who have been holding it since talk of barns, lilies, and ravens. Some wear worry like a cloak, others hide it in hate. Straight backs and measured steps. He stops where the hill opens to a small terrace of stone, a place shepherds use to watch the lower fields. The valley lies below them, rooftops, smoke rising from cook fires, a line of travelers inching along the road like thread in a seam. He sits, not to rule, but to be with them. Your hands, he says softly, were made to bless, not to clutch. They glance down, at fists, at coin pouches, at shawl edges twisted tight. He opens his palms, showing empty skin, lines that look like roads. Control feels strong, he continues, but it is a small room with no windows. You cannot breathe there. You cannot sing there. You cannot love there. A woman near the front blinks quickly. For years she has held her household together with lists and tight schedules, as if love could be guaranteed by perfect plans. A fisherman flexes his fingers as though unknotting rope. He knows the ache of gripping nets through long nights that yield nothing. When you hold too tightly, he says, you lose what you mean to save. When you loosen your grip, you discover it was never yours to keep. It was yours to carry for a while. He lets the words settle like seeds. Then he stands and points to the slope, where a few small trees cling to thin soil. See these? The wind tugs at them. Their branches bend, not break. Strength is not stiffness, it is rootedness. What bends is not weak. What refuses to bend will crack. Silence deepens. Leaves tick against one another like quiet applause. He looks at them, each face a story. Let go, he says gently, of the outcomes you cannot control, the judgments you cannot fix, the timelines you cannot keep. His eyes soften. Let go of the apology you wanted but never received. Let go of the story where you are always right. Let go of the fear that keeps you from giving what would have saved you if you had given it sooner. No one moves. It feels like he has set down a basket of invisible stones and invited them to stop carrying theirs. To forgive, he says, is not to say what happened was light. It is to refuse to let it be your master. He pauses. Peace does not visit clenched teeth. It enters through open hands. A man in the back exhales, long and low, remembering a brother he hasn't spoken to in years. A young mother pictures the ledger she keeps in her mind of small wrongs and sharp looks. She sees it burn like chaff in a clean wind. The teacher kneels and draws a line through dust with his finger. You cannot control wind, he says, but you can raise a sail. He draws a small arc like a boat. Faith is a sail. Control is an anchor dropped in fear. He straightens, the faintest smile at his lips. Give, and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over. He tips his hands as though pouring grain into a lap. Release your grip, and you will have room to receive. A child near his feet copies him, opening her small palms to the sky as if expecting rain. The crowd softens at the sight. He does not leave it as poetry. He names the practice. Leave the extra coat for the neighbor you avoid. Cancel the small debt that knots your sleep. Pray blessing over the name that tastes bitter in your mouth. Sit in silence for an hour without solving your life. Breathe, trust, begin again. A breeze lifts, carrying the smell of wood smoke, bread, and cool earth. The everyday world goes on, and somehow that comfort is part of the lesson. Surrender is not escape from life. It is the way back into it. Let the Father be the keeper of your outcomes, he says. Be faithful with your moments. They listen as if learning a new way to walk. Tomorrow, he adds, will carry its own weight. Carry today. It is enough. His voice thins to a whisper, and still they hear him. The kingdom enters where hands are empty. For a while, no one speaks. The terrace holds them like a cupped hand. Someone wipes tears with the edge of a sleeve and doesn't apologize for them. Someone else laughs softly at nothing in particular, surprised by the sound. Then the teacher looks toward the valley where early lamps begin to bloom in doorways like small stars. His gaze lingers, thoughtful, tender. There is a readiness that belongs to love, he says. It keeps a lamp trimmed. It keeps a door unlatched. It listens for footsteps, not in fear, but in joy. Several glance at their own sandals, at the lengthening shadows, at the sky, thinking of evening. He is not urging panic. He is teaching watchfulness, born of trust, the kind that packs light and keeps the hearth warm. Be dressed for service, he says, and keep your lamps burning. The last light rests on his face. Autumn leans closer. Somewhere a shepherd calls. Somewhere a latch is lifted. They rise, lighter by what they set down, steadier in what they carry. And as the first lamps flare in the village below, he begins to speak of servants who wait well, hearts awake, hands ready, lamps bright in the dark. Evening settles across the land, laying soft shadows over the stone paths and the olive trees swaying gently in the fading light. Torches begin to flicker in distant homes, small circles of warmth against the growing dark. The people gather closer to the teacher, sensing his voice is leading them somewhere deeper, toward readiness, toward something unseen but coming. He speaks gently, but his words carry weight. Be dressed and ready, he says, like servants waiting for their master to return from a wedding feast, so that when he comes and knocks, they can open the door at once. Some glance toward their own homes, where lamps are lit at dusk, where doors are barred to keep out the night. Others picture a master returning late, servants dozing at the table, lamps burned low, the house unprepared. Blessed are those servants, he continues, whom the master finds watching when he comes. Truly, I tell you, he will dress himself to serve, have them recline at the table, and will come and wait on them. They blink in surprise. A master serving his servants? It is upside down. It is beautiful. It is like him. He looks at them carefully, one by one. But if that servant says in his heart, my master is taking a long time in coming, and begins to mistreat others, to eat and drink and drown himself in excess, the master will come on a day he does not expect and at an hour he does not know. A hush spreads, not of fear, but of conviction. The point is not punishment. The point is love that deserves readiness. The master is not absent, he says. He is preparing a feast. Will you be ready when he returns, or asleep with your hand still clutching the world? Near the edge of the crowd, a young man looks at his sandals. He had planned to follow only when things became easier. An older woman thinks of her lamp, empty of oil, untouched for weeks. He does not rush them. He lets the question sink in. Then he adds softly, "You also must be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you do not expect him." Peter steps forward, brow furrowed. "Lord, are you telling this parable to us, or to everyone?" The teacher's eyes rest on him, then on the others. "Who then is the faithful and wise servant," he asks, "whom the master puts in charge of his household to give them their food at the proper time?" They wait for the answer. "Blessed is that servant whom the master finds doing so when he returns." No celebration, no applause, just faithfulness, quiet, steady, unseen by crowds, but seen by heaven. The wind whistles through the olive branches. Somewhere in the valley, a dog barks. Torches flicker. He continues, voice softer now. "From everyone who has been given much, much will be required. And from the one entrusted with much, even more will be asked." Some lower their eyes, others clench their hands, not in fear, but in realization. This is not about fear of judgment. This is about living like someone you love is coming back. A little girl beside her mother holds her lamp closer, as though understanding more than the grown-ups. A man who once spent his life storing treasures now thinks of storing light instead. The teacher looks out across the land. Houses glow beneath the dimming sky. A few farmers walk home with tools over their shoulders. The scent of baked bread rises from a cottage somewhere nearby. "There is a kind of waiting that is empty," he says quietly, "and a kind that is full, like a lamp filled with oil, quietly burning, ready for the knock at the door." He does not speak of dates or signs in the sky. He speaks of lamps, hearts, faithfulness in the unseen hours. The night deepens. Stars begin to pierce the horizon one by one. He falls silent for a moment, and the quiet around him feels like a heartbeat. Soon, he will speak of division, the kind that comes when truth meets resistance. He will speak of fire, of purpose and destiny, of why he came. But for now, he lets the image rest. A lamp burning in a faithful servant's hands, waiting not in fear, but in love. The air feels different now. Not colder, not louder, simply heavier, as though the wind itself is holding its breath. The disciples sense it, even if they cannot name it. Conversations grow quieter, laughter fades quicker, even the leaves seem to fall more slowly from the trees, like they know something is changing. The teacher walks ahead of them with the same steady stride, yet there is a depth in his silence that makes hearts uneasy. He answers questions, but with fewer words. His gaze lingers longer on the horizon, on people's faces, on the temple in the distance. He sees the end long before they do. As they make their way through a narrow street toward Jerusalem, the crowds are different too. Some faces shine with hope, others twist with suspicion. Some bow their heads as he passes. Others whisper behind closed doors, glancing around before speaking his name like it is a problem to be solved. The disciples walk close, some to protect him, some to protect themselves from their own uncertainty. They arrive at a quiet place outside the city, where fig trees bend over stone walls and the ground is littered with fallen leaves, brittle underfoot. The teacher stops. The others slow with him, waiting, though they don't know what for. He turns to them, not with fear, not with haste, but with a calm that is both comforting and unsettling. "The hour is coming," he says, "when the Son of Man will be handed over." Their hearts clench. He continues, not with thunder, but with truth. Men will scheme, friends will stumble, darkness will think it has won. Peter's jaw tightens. "Lord, no, we won't let it happen." The teacher's eyes meet his, gentle, unwavering. "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. Peter shakes his head, eyes stinging. "I would die first." No answer, only silence, and a sadness that says everything. Around them, leaves detach from branches and drift to the earth without sound. He speaks again. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me. They try to listen, but fear is a loud thing. Later that evening, as the sky stains itself in purple and gold, they gather in the upper room of a friend's house. Oil lamps flicker against the walls. The table is set with bread, wine, herbs. For a moment, it feels like any other meal, until he breaks the bread. This is my body, he says softly, given for you. He pours the wine. This cup is my blood, of the new covenant, poured out for many. No one speaks. Some stare at their hands. Others blink away hot tears they cannot explain. He looks around the table, eyes resting on each face, on John's quiet devotion, on Thomas's furrowed doubts, on Judas's restless hands. His voice lowers. One of you will betray me. The room freezes. Judas shifts. Surely not I, Rabbi. The teacher does not accuse. He simply says, what you're about to do, do quickly. Judas stands. Shadows swallow him as he leaves. The others sit in stunned silence, the sound of his footsteps fading down the stairs like a drumbeat announcing what is to come. The teacher stands and begins to wash their feet, calloused, dusty, undeserving. Peter protests. He insists he is not worthy. If I do not wash you, the teacher says, you have no part with me. Peter bows his head. Then not just my feet, my hands and my head as well. After the meal, they leave the city and walk to the Mount of Olives. Lanterns swing softly in the night. The leaves of the olive trees shimmer in muted silver under the moonlight. He pauses beneath an ancient tree. Stay here, he says, and keep watch with me. They try. But weariness is a quiet thief. One by one they drift into sleep. Only he remains awake. He kneels on the cold earth. Father, his voice cracks like dry wood, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. A long pause. Yet not my will, but yours. No thunder answers. No angel stops the night. Only the sound of wind moving gently through the trees, like creation itself bowing its head. He rises slowly, the weight still there, but now carried willingly. The disciples stir. Torches appear in the distance. Footsteps, metal, betrayal drawing near. He does not run. He only says, the hour has come. And as the first torchlight glows against olive leaves, the world holds still. Because something holy is about to break. Night breaks apart under a procession of torches. Steel glints. Voices press in. The garden, which once held only prayer, fills with footsteps and the smell of oil and sweat. The teacher stands beneath branches that have almost emptied themselves. Leaves drift down like slow embers, settling on cloaks and boots and ground. Judas steps forward, face pale in the firelight. The kiss lands where greetings used to live. The teacher does not flinch. Friend, he says, and the word holds a grief larger than anger. Sword scrape free. Peter's hand flashes, the air splitting with a cry. The teacher lifts a palm. No more of this. He reaches, heals, and the wound closes as if the night itself were ashamed of what it tried to do. He lets his hands be bound. They take him through narrow streets that remember festival songs, and now cradle whispers. Windows glow, then dim as faces retreat. Dogs bark and fall silent. Above, the moon rides thin and precise, a sickle of light cutting the sky. In the courtyard, a fire burns low. Peter hovers at its edge, heat licking his shins, fear gripping his throat. Questions find him like arrows. You were with him, weren't you? He shakes his head too quickly. I don't know the man. Once, then twice, a third time. With oaths he doesn't recognize as his own. Somewhere far off, a rooster tears the dark with a single note that feels like breaking. The teacher, being led away, turns. Their eyes meet. Not accusation, ache. Peter stumbles into the alley, the night opening under him. Inside, the counsels move like gears. Accusations stack. The teacher answers little. Where speech would be defense, he chooses silence. Where silence would be evasion, he speaks. You say that I am. His words are few enough to count, weighty enough to carry. Dawn finds the city hushed and hollow-eyed. It gathers itself in a gray shawl. Trees stand bare along the road, skeletal against the paling east. They take him to Pilate, whose hands are already tired. The governor studies the man before him, the way a soldier studies weather, calculating, uneasy. "Are you the king of the Jews?" he asks. "Is that your own idea?" the teacher replies. "Or did others talk to you about me?" Questions unravel the rope the world tried to tie. "What is truth?" Pilate breathes, not to learn but to escape the room he has entered. He steps back into the safer noise of politics. The crowd is ready, barterers of righteousness with pockets full of stones. "Barabbas!" they shout. "Release Barabbas!" The teacher stands, a quiet place no one chooses. Pilate washes his hands with water that doesn't clean. He offers the crowd their answer and receives their noise as if it were wisdom. Soldiers weave mockery into a crown. Thorns bruise the skin that blessed children and lepers and enemies without hesitation. A robe falls across his shoulders like a cruel joke. "Hail King!" they laugh, fear sharpening into sport. He does not answer insult with curse. He bears. Outside the city, the wind begins to change. Cold slides along the stones. Women gather at a distance, faces lined by grief and winter coming early. Mary holds silence the way others hold knives. John stands near her, younger than sorrow, but learning its language. The disciples, once loud in promises, thin into shadows at doorways, torn between terror and the ache to stay. They lay the beam across his back. Wood remembers trees. The hill remembers other footsteps. The earth remembers Abel's blood. The teacher steps forward as if to shoulder more than wood. Each pace marks a mercy he has already decided. The street tightens into a narrow throat of dust and breath. A woman reaches past the press and touches his face with a cloth as if the world were still allowed to be kind. For a heartbeat it is. He falters. A man from the country is pulled from the path. Simon, surprised into history. He lifts the weight. Their eyes meet, stranger to stranger, and for a moment the burden looks different, shared. The city gates exhale them into open air. The hill waits, bone white, unadorned. Sky thins, light grows hard. Autumn's last colors lie scattered at the edges of the road like spent prayers. The soldiers move like men whose jobs have made them deaf to the human voice. Hammers are arranged. A sign is prepared in 3 languages for a world that insists it does not understand. He looks over the gathered faces, the curious, the cruel, the stunned, the broken, the very ones he fed and healed and steadied when storms forgot themselves. He finds his mother, and in the ache that cleaves heaven and earth, he makes a home with a sentence. "Woman, behold your son." To John, "Behold your mother." Even here, he is still arranging care, still setting lamps in windows for the long night to come. The first nail lifts, catching light. He breathes, and for a flicker the air holds the shape of Eden, before sword, before sweat of the brow, before brothers learn to bury one another's names under fields. Pilate's men glance at the sky, uneasy without knowing why. The wind is picked up, not yet fierce, but insistent, its fingers moving through grass, through hair, through time. A cloud edges the sun. Somewhere, a temple veil hangs heavy on its loom of centuries, not yet torn but thinking of it. He closes his eyes, not to escape, to enter. Hands that once broke bread now open to be broken. A body that once carried children and fever and fear now offers itself like seed to the ground that looks like defeat and will turn out to be garden. Around him, voices bristle and fray. "If you are, love yourself." He does not. He saves them instead, one sentence at a time. Mercy is not a theory on this hill. It is breath. Autumn's last light leans sideways, thin as a blade, and the day holds its breath. The wind gathers strength. Words are rising, the kind that do not end when lips grow still, the kind that move through centuries like weather. And on this bare hill, with branches stripped and sky narrowing, he readies the sentence that will change the air. The sky darkens before it should. Noon bends into twilight, as though the sun itself cannot bear to watch. Clouds gather thick and low, pressing weight into the air. At the hill, the wind changes. No longer just a breeze, but something with memory, like it has been called from the corners of creation to witness this hour. The teacher hangs between earth and sky. Blood trails down wood. Every breath he draws now is carved from pain, yet even now, his voice carries what no other voice would give in this moment. "Father." Forgive them. They do not know what they are doing. Forgive, not after the nails are removed, not after apologies are made. Now, as iron pierces flesh and voices mock beneath the cross, some scoff, some fall silent. The words sink into the air like seeds dropped into hard soil, not yet breaking, but never forgotten. Beside him, two criminals strain against their own suffering. One joins the mockers, the other does not. He lifts his head as much as the wood allows and whispers, "Remember me when you come into your kingdom." The teacher turns his face slightly. Even here, his eyes hold. Gentleness. "Truly, I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." A promise spoken to a dying man. A door opening in the middle of agony. At the foot of the cross, soldiers cast lots for his clothing. Dice clatter against stone. They laugh, numb to the weight of what their hands are touching. Near them stands his mother, grief silent, eyes scorched with tears she no longer feels. John stands beside her, unsure whether to hold her or fall to his knees. The teacher sees them. "Woman, behold your son." Then to John, "Behold your mother." Even in dying, he makes a place for love to live on. The darkness deepens. The wind begins to moan through the crosses like a low lament. Some clutch their cloaks tighter, others look to the sky, unsettled. A murmur sweeps through the crowd. Something is wrong with the light, with the air, with the world. Hours pass like years. Then, with a voice torn but unwavering, he cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" It is not despair. It is the honest cry of one who bears the full weight of separation so no one else will have to. The earth seems to flinch. Someone presses sour wine to his lips on a reed of hyssop. He tastes it, breathes deeply, and whispers a single word. In the language of heaven and earth, it is finished, not defeated, completed, the work done, the debt erased, the door opened. His final breath is a surrender, not a collapse. "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." He exhales, and the world responds. The earth shudders, rocks split, the ground groans like something ancient awakening. In the temple far away, the veil, the thick curtain that divided man from God, tears from top to bottom, not by human hand, from heaven to earth. The separation ends. A centurion, hand still on his spear, stares up at the cross, his lips part, voice barely a breath. Surely, this was the Son of God. The wind dies down, the darkness remains, but it is not empty. It feels like a held breath before dawn. The people begin to leave, some beating their chests, some silent, some unable to walk away. Mary stays, John stays. A few faithful women remain, their tears falling quietly into dust mixed with blood. The teacher's head rests against his shoulder, still. The world does not roar. It waits. Even the wind holds its voice. The cross stands, not as defeat, but as a doorway. Evening draws near. There is a tomb waiting, and soon hands that once dropped nets to follow him will carry his body to its rest. Silence settles over the land like a blanket of ash. The crowds are gone. The shouting, the hammering, the thunder of anger, all of it has fallen into a deep, aching quiet. Only the wind remains, moving gently through olive branches, lifting fallen leaves and laying them down again with reverence. His body lies within a borrowed tomb, wrapped in linen and myrrh. The stone is heavy at the entrance, cold and immovable. Soldiers stand guard outside, their armor catching the dying rays of evening. They shift their feet, unsteady, as though even they can hear something in the stillness they cannot name. The garden around the tomb breathes in slow rhythm. Fig trees bow slightly, shadows lengthen across moss-covered stones, and the last light of day slips behind the hills. A hush lingers over everything, not empty but waiting, like the pause between a held breath and a heartbeat. Mary, mother of the teacher, sits not far from the tomb. Her hands are clasped tightly in her lap, knuckles pale against the fading light. She does not speak. She has no words left, only the memory of his voice, his touch, his kindness. Her tears have dried, but her heart beats in broken, uneven rhythms. John remains beside her, silent as the stone, watching the sky turn from crimson to violet. Elsewhere, the disciples hide behind locked doors. They speak in whispers, afraid the walls might betray them. Peter sits apart from the others, shoulders hunched, face buried in his hands. His denial echoes in his ears louder than hammer on nail. He cannot forget the look in the teacher's eyes. Not anger, but sorrow and love. A love he feels unworthy to speak of. Night thickens. The world is quieter than it has ever been. Even nature seems to bow. The moon rises, pale and watchful. Stars pierce the darkness like small promises. In the temple, the torn veil hangs silently, its edges frayed but open. A doorway no hand can stitch closed again. Some priests stare at it in the dim lamplight, unable to speak, unable to understand. Others sweep the floor around the altar, pretending nothing has changed, even as their hands tremble. The earth remembers. The hill where the cross stood is empty now, but the ground still bears the marks of blood and tears. The wind whistles softly through the tall grass, as if singing a lullaby over a battlefield finally silent. In the tomb, there is no movement, no sound, only the steady thrum of eternity pressing close. The teacher rests. This is not the rest of defeat. It is the rest of completion. Outside, autumn continues its slow surrender. Leaves fall without fuss, covering the earth in gold and copper. Branches stretch toward the sky like prayers. Somewhere, a child sleeps in her mother's arms, unaware that the world has changed forever. The Sabbath passes in solemn stillness. Women gather oils and spices in clay jars, fingers trembling as they tie cloth around them. They whisper not of miracles, but of love, the kind that stays, even after breath is gone. They do not know what they will do about the stone, they only know they must go. And so the quiet stretches into the early hours of morning. The sky, still dark, begins to pale at the edges. Shadows shift across the garden. The world stands at the edge of something it cannot yet see, like a seed beneath soil, sensing warmth above it. Birds rest on branches, feathers tucked close, waiting for light. The stone remains, the tomb remains, but the silence begins to tremble, not with fear but with something gentle, something alive, something like the breath before a song. The teacher rests, and all creation holds still, as though listening for the sound of footsteps no one has ever heard before.